jungle.
Hello, you are listening to Trump Republic Radio. I am your co-host, Bobby Hester, and as always, I'm joined by my host, Enzo Quesada.
Hey, how's it going?
Enzo couldn't be here because he is still up in Plano working on the campaign for Philip Huffines for Texas Senate. Is that right, Enzo?
Yes, that is true. I was out block walking. Even today, I haven't had a day off in 2 weeks, but the campaign is almost over. The elections are on Tuesday, and we got a good chance at winning. So, I'm pretty excited to be done campaigning for a while here.
And I'm going to be excited to have you back in the area because I don't want to have to keep driving 4 hours up just to be able to see you and everyone else that we know that's up there. But, before we begin, I think there is a few things that we do need to mention. First and foremost, we now have a Patreon account. That is right, ladies and gentlemen. If you go onto Patreon, we're going to have it in the description of this episode here. But you can go onto Patreon and search Trump Public Radio if you want to find us. And if you really do want to support us, that's the place that you should do it. Currently, we have two things set up. The first is if you donate $5 per month, then with your permission, we'll give you a personalized thank you during an episode. And if you donate, I think I have it set at, I believe, $10 per month. If you do that, then you can pick any topic you want, within reason, of course, and we will do a midweek episode on it. Me and Enzo have been thinking about doing that as a way to entice people to do that. So if you donate $10 a month, and we'll get in contact with you and tell us what you want us to talk about, and we'll do an entire midweek episode on that. So we're looking forward to doing that. So if you really support the show, go on there, and that's the place to do it.
Yeah, and the midweeks we haven't really been able to do them, obviously, because we've been in different cities, but I'm going to be getting back in the area very soon, and we're going to pick up on doing those in general more. I've had quite a few new ideas myself, so...
Right, so I guess with that being said, are you ready to start, Enzo, or do you have anything else to say before we begin?
The one thing I just want to say before we go is just kind of the rallying call of the show is we just ask that you turn on the show to one other person. If you can recommend the show to just one other person, it really, grows the scope and reach of the podcast. And, yeah, other than that, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I am too. So the first story that we have to talk about is Trump officially announced he is running for re-election in 2020, nearly 1,000 days before the November 2020 presidential election, and around a year earlier than previous presidents have done. President Trump announced that he is officially running for re-election in 2020. He also announced that he's naming San Antonio, Texas digital guru Brad Parscale as his campaign manager. Parscale had a web design firm who actually helped with Trump's online presence during the 2016 election. Pretty much everything online that Trump did in terms of like Twitter and website hosting and all that sort of stuff, that was Parscale's plan. That was him pushing everything online. So without him, we would not have won that election. But the Trump campaign also says that it will engage with the 2018 midterm elections, quote, providing candidates with general support, endorsements, and rallies. Trump's first official re-election rally is set to be held in Pittsburgh on March 10th. So, most presidents tend to wait until about a year and a half before the election. So right around, November, or I'd say summer of 2019 is when a normal president would have announced that they're running for re-election. But by doing it a year early, not only does Trump essentially get to stay in campaign mode the entire time, because, let's face it, Trump is best when he is campaigning. He'll also be able to hold a bunch more rallies. As I said there, by engaging with the 2018 midterms, he's going to be able to do exactly what we were talking about last year on the show. We were saying what he needs to do is hold rallies for these people in different states during the general election for this year. If there's someone like running for a Republican Senate seat in like Indiana or West Virginia, go out there, hold a rally for them, bring people out, get your message out there. That's what won before, and that's the winning thing for now. So
Yeah, and one thing that I think goes unnoticed by Trump announcing so early, but I think is very smart, is by announcing his campaign this early, if any sort of like NGO nonprofit, tries to say negative things in regards to Trump, like they can lose their nonprofit status because that's getting political then.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, it's a way to counteract like leftist activism.
Well, there always is there's always something else that's good when it comes to stuff like this. That's one thing that I have learned through doing this. But, one of the other things I did want to mention is, Trump is able to sell a lot of merchandise on his website, especially Trump hats, T-shirts, whatnot. By staying in full campaign mode, he's going to be able to raise a lot more money for his reelection campaign. And by doing so, he's going to be able to raise a lot more money for the RNC. And I think by also announcing it this early, any potential Republican Party challengers for the Republican primary in 2020, they now have to wait essentially an extra year of Trump campaigning by himself before they would announce their running. Because let's face it, anyone who would want to challenge Trump in the Republican primary for 2020 is not ready yet. They're wanting to get through the 2018 midterms and then start making a name for themselves. So by doing it this early, he's also able to kind of, poke at them, and any good things that do happen, he's going to be able to campaign immediately, actively on it. Without essentially anyone stopping him. And so by the time anyone else would try to challenge him, if they do, he's already got like a year or so of campaign under his belt by himself, held rallies all over the place. So I think that, it's not his main goal here, but that does definitely play a factor.
Yeah. So, and you look back at like Barack Obama for his 2012 re-election campaign, he only announced about 500 days prior. So Trump really, as we mentioned earlier, has really bucked the trend by announcing his re-election run so early. And, Trump is one of the oldest presidents of all time. And, a lot of people question, like, does he still have it in him to run, for another term? But, I mean, he's already stated he's going to do it now, so we know.
Normally you see pictures of presidents when they first get into office and then when they leave, and you can see how much just the office of the presidency ages them. Trump looks the exact same as he did when he announced he was running for president back when he came down the escalator in 2015. And I hate to say it, I think campaigning and running for president, just the energy and excitement a person gets from that's probably what's keeping him, able to keep going. He's probably getting bored when he's not, traveling and going around the country. There are times when it's weeks at a time where they're just at the White House not doing much. I tend to think that probably gets boring for him. Plus, by announcing he's running for re-election this early, because of the fact that he's going to be able to hold so many more rallies, that means he's going to get away from D.C. more. And let's face it, no one wants to stay in D.C. that long, especially, quote-unquote, one of the most hated people in the country. He wants to get out of there, get out of the swamp. If he has to go to Florida, go to Texas, go to Pennsylvania, wherever he has to go, he's going to take every chance he can get. So, I mean, that's pretty much all I have to say on this.
Yeah, let's go on to the next thing that we got here for the top of the news.
So the next thing that we have up is Hope Hicks has resigned. Hope Hicks, who is Trump's White House communications director, she announced that she will be resigning her position within the coming weeks, but the exact date has not yet been determined. Although the announcement came a day after Hicks spent 9 hours in a closed hearing of the House Intelligence Committee, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said the decision was not related to her appearance before the panel. Trump has called her a, quote, truly great person whom he would miss having at his side. So, this is just yet another person that has left the White House that, she came on right after Scaramucci left, and, he only stayed, 10 days, 11 days or something like that.
It was like a week.
Yeah, it was barely over a week. I know that. But, I liked Hope Hicks. She was, she's very intelligent. She's very beautiful. She was a good person to have there. So, we haven't really given any reasons why she's leaving. She's not leaving in bad taste, that's for sure. So, I guess it's just, we'll have to see who replaces her because I have no idea.
It is just another person though leaving, and you look at the trend of this. This administration that has one of the worst turnover rates of all time for a presidential administration. It really shows like how unstable the Trump administration has been, which has been a downside to it. He's still gotten a lot of things done despite this, but it would have been good if he still had people by his side. I mean, you look at when he came into the White House. At this point, the only person that's still there is Stephen Miller, and Sessions is still there, but that's about it.
Yeah, and who knows how much longer Sessions is going to be out serving at DOJ if he doesn't get his act together here.
Yeah. So, another departure from the Trump administration with Hope Hicks.
Yeah, and luckily enough, she did say that it'll be, she'll be resigning within the next few weeks or so. So, again, because they didn't exactly say what date that's going to be, it could be next week, it could be 3 weeks from now, who knows. So, for now, she's still there, but, obviously they're going to want to make sure that whoever replaces her is good and ready by the time she walks out that door. So, I guess segueing from that to some other stuff that's happening around the White House. Jared Kushner got his security clearance downgraded. Jared Kushner, who is President Trump's son-in-law and advisor, has had his security clearance downgraded, which will prevent him from viewing many sensitive documents to which he has access. As well as Kushner, several other top White House aides were also informed that their security clearances were downgraded as well. They were downgraded from the top secret /SCI, SCI standing for sensitive compartmented information level, to simply just the secret level. And although the president has the authority to grant permanent top secret security clearances to whoever he wants, Trump said, quote, "I will let General Kelly make that decision." And then the next day, General Kelly did, and Kushner's security clearance got downgraded. So, this is good news. I don't trust Jared Kushner at all. I don't like Jared Kushner. I think him and Ivanka have way too much influence on Trump in ways that I do not like. So this is just music to my ears.
Yeah, you look at, Kushner's history in politics. He's always been a Democrat,
So is Ivanka.
Yeah. And they've donated a lot to Democrats over the course of their lives. And when you look at matters of gaining security clearances, they take into consideration an individual's amount of debt that they hold. Because, if someone has a top secret clearance and they have a lot of debt, maybe they could be swayed by a foreign entity to hand over secrets to get that debt paid off. And you look at Kushner's business, he has over $1 billion in debt. So he's not really, the best of people to be giving that kind of clearance to.
But I've also read some other articles on this and listened to some other material. And one of the things that this really is going to affect is Kushner's peace talks in the Middle East. So, what we haven't really talked about and what really no one in the media has been talking about is Kushner's been kind of taking it under the rug by himself to try to broker some sort of, peace agreements in the Middle East, and
particularly like a two-state situation.
Yeah,
in Israel.
Precisely. And so, without a top secret security clearance, just simply having the secret level of security clearance is not going to grant him access to anything he needs to do that. So, again, that's good because I don't trust him. I don't trust his, what he wants. I don't trust his instincts at all. So the fact that he's no longer going to be working on stuff like that, I'm okay with. Now, I will say the fact that there are so many advisors to Trump who currently have not gotten their, security clearances the way they want. I just got to say, Trump is, it's unprecedented the level of, red tape that the Trump administration is being put through to where, you think at this point in time, the majority of Obama's special advisors would have not had their security clearances by now. No, they wouldn't. They would have had those almost immediately. So, it's just the amount that he has to go through, how many hoops he has to jump through and stuff. It's amazing. But at least this time, it's probably going to end up working out in our favor a little bit.
Yeah, it's a way for the entrenched bureaucracy to prevent the president from, administering his agenda by keeping important advisors from getting the security clearances. I mean, they have backlogs in the thousands, sometimes it could take a year and a half sometimes to get through security clearance. It's a very long process. And Kushner was given, temporary top secret clearance, but that doesn't stay permanent. I'm not sure if now his downgrade gives him the permanent secret clearance, or is that also just temporary? I'm not sure, but
I believe that the downgrade is permanent. Although I don't know about the other advisors that he has, because Kushner was pretty much the high-level person that we're talking about, but there's like 5 or 6 other people that are involved in this as well who also got security clearances mixed around. None of them were named in the articles that I were able to find, because it's people that we just don't really, your average White House staffer that might, have a higher position than others that would need access to certain information. Some of those type of people have not had security clearances go through the way that they should have. But, I don't really have anything else to say on this one.
yeah. Let's move on now to what Sessions has been up to at the Department of Justice.
Yeah, so speaking of Sessions yet again, Attorney General Jeff Sessions said Tuesday that the Department of Justice will investigate potential abuses of the FISA courts. Sessions said, quote, "Yes, it will be investigated." Now, you have to remember something that else happened this week. 13 representatives, being led by Representative Lee Zeldin from New York, they have all signed a letter calling on Sessions to appoint a second counsel to investigate the FISA abuse disparities around the Clinton investigation. So there's been a lot of talk recently, especially after the memo got released, about, will these FISA abuses of power actually be investigated? And at least now it appears that Sessions is saying, yeah, we are going to investigate it. So, who knows how long that's going to take. But I think that if he backtracks on this and doesn't investigate it, especially if a second special counsel is not appointed, then Sessions' time at the DOJ is not going to last much longer. I mean, we've all seen those, the tweets back and forth, or at least the tweets from Trump calling out Sessions, and it just seems like, when it all started, Sessions seemed like this great guy, but he hasn't seemed like he's done very much at the Department of Justice. And, a lot of people question, what are you doing there, dude? Like, there's so much stuff you could be doing, after accusing himself from the Russia investigation, all this sort of stuff. It's like, what's going on? Like, are you secretly working on something that you just can't tell us? Or are you just, sitting on your ass and too lazy or incompetent to do whatever you're trying to do? Because I don't know, but all I know is that he needs this. He needs to investigate the FISA court abuses. He needs to appoint a second special counsel, and if they don't, then like I said, his time there is not going to last very long.
The hard part about appointing a second special counsel is, the media has done real good cover on the Mueller probe and gaining that legitimacy, but the media would attack any sort of second special counsel into these FISA abuses to be, a political attack. And that's the one thing that I think would be hard to navigate through, but it's still something that we need to do. Like, for the power that Sessions is granted as Attorney General, he hasn't done half of what he should have done at this point. And I just think it comes from a place of he's grossly incompetent. I mean, as we said, this goes back to from the very start with him recusing himself. He's not taking leadership over the Department of Justice like it was expected of him.
No, he's not.
So, yeah, you want to move on to the next thing?
Well, I just wanted to say one more thing, and that's regarding Sessions and, his inability, it seems, to be able to do very much. And that's the fact that, I don't think Sessions was the right pick for the job. I hate to say it, but after a year plus of being in, I'm just not so sure that Sessions has what it takes to be the head of the Department of Justice.
And look what it cost us.
But, in regards to what you were saying about, it will take a political hit if we do it, but it's something that needs to be done. That's about the best way that you can describe it. Now, whether or not that's good to do in a midterm year, I don't know. It's something that needs to be investigated. It needs to be investigated now. You can't let the story die down. You need to actively go after it. In terms of, how it'll come off, though, I think Trump's base wants to see the stuff investigated. So if you don't investigate it, that's just going to piss off the base, and it's going to make people less likely to win Republicans less likely to win in the midterms. So, people who hate it, who hate the idea of Sessions putting a second special counsel, essentially saying, people on the left, they're going to hate Trump no matter what he does. And those people are going to vote against Trump or against Republicans no matter what they do. So you might as well just go ahead and do it. If anything, you'll just get your base happy. And, that's part of what we've learned is, every single time Trump goes against his base, and we're going to get to that when we talk about guns here in a while, every time he goes against his base, there's a very loud and a very angry backlash at what he's doing. So I think that you want to keep those people in line and make sure that they are actually willing and able to vote for you in 2020 and vote for Republicans later this year. You need to make sure that they are happy. And by doing this, by appointing a second special counsel, that's the way that you can do it.
Yeah, most definitely. Moving on, though, we got some stuff on Trump saving us some money on Air Force One. President Trump has reached an agreement with the Boeing Corp to reduce the price of the next generation of Air Force One aircrafts. The original estimated costs were said to be in excess of $5 billion, but the agreed to price is now set to $3.9 billion, which is a saving of nearly $1.4 billion off of the original cost. Back in December 2016, then President-elect Trump tweeted, quote, "Boeing is building a brand new 747 Air Force One for future presidents. The costs are out of control. More than $4 billion. Cancel order." So, Trump followed through on what he said, and he's saving, $1.4 billion in taxpayer dollars on Air Force One. So, very good stuff there.
Very good stuff there. So, I guess we can move on to the next story then.
Yes. This is some stuff that frustrates me very greatly, and that is that Trump is extending Russian sanctions for another year. President Trump has extended a series of sanctions on Russia and certain Russian individuals for another year. They were first signed by President Barack Obama in 2014 in response to the political crisis in Ukraine. This also comes after the State Department on Thursday approved the sale of Javelin anti-tank missiles to Kiev, pending approval by Congress. So, it's funny. Trump is made out to be, he's the president controlled by the Kremlin, so we're supposed to believe with the Russian collusion
he's a Putin puppet
mythos. And yet, he's extending Russian sanctions. Like, he's not doing something that's good for Russia. This hurts them.
Yeah, and, again, I happen to agree with you. I don't want sanctions to be continued on Russia, and the one thing I don't have a problem, though, is the selling of anti-tank missiles. I know a lot of people do like to complain when, the U.S. sells military arms and weapons and stuff to different countries across the planet. I tend to think that if it's better to sell those to European countries, if you're going to at all, rather than Middle Eastern or African countries. So, again, at least this is one of those things that does have to go through Congress, at least, in terms of the sale of the Javelin missiles there. But in terms of the sanctions on Russia being extended for another year, I just don't see it. I don't like it. I don't think it's a good idea.
Well, the thing with selling these Javelin anti-tank missiles to the Ukrainian government is that these are going to be used against the Russian separatists in the east of Ukraine.
I mean, I'm okay with Russia taking the east of Ukraine. I'd be okay with
they already have annexed Crimea. But, selling these weapons to them, sometimes Russian troops get involved in the front there, and, it's kind of a shady fog of war. I just don't want things that provoke more hostilities against Russia, and we want to be cooling things off. And, I know there's a lot of people in Congress that'd be eager to get this approved. And, the Ukrainian government's a mess. I don't want to deal with these people. But, I don't know, this is the this is the way that things work in Washington.
Yeah, so, that it'll probably get sold. You tend to think it's not that good an idea, I guess. I think it's more okay. Obviously, yeah, it is going to get used against Russia, but at the same time, it's Ukraine's problem to deal with. And, I hate the fact that, the U.S. tends to fund both sides when it comes to different conflicts, but at the same time, if you weren't funding these things, you wouldn't have any say in it. And I hate to say it, but I do like the position of the U.S. in the world in terms of at least having somewhat of a say in stuff. Now, I think that goes too far a lot. I think that leads to a lot more war in ways that shouldn't. But, imagine if the situation in Ukraine took off to the point where any U.S. interests in the region were severely negatively affected. I would definitely want our influence to be there if we have it. So, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, I don't like the fact that Trump is putting sanctions on Russia, or at least extending them.
Yeah.
So,
let's move on now to the thing that we want to talk in terms of the economy, and that is the new talks of tariffs being applied. So, this week, Trump announced that we're going to be placing a 25% tariff on steel coming into the United States, and we're going to be placing a 10% tariff on aluminum coming into the United States. And the freaking out over this has been something else. I mean, I was just at Whataburger before coming over here, and the guys behind me were even freaking out about these tariffs, talking about it. I don't think people really understand why these are necessary. And you look at the state of international trade, the Republicans, they always try to sell you, and the Libertarians try to sell you on the principles of free trade this and free trade that, but all these different nations are protectionist in their own right. You look at China in particular, look at their steel industry. You go back to around 2000, per a percentage of the global output of steel, back then they were only around 10%. Now they're nearly half of all steel created in the world. In the same period of time, the United States steel and aluminum industry has fallen off. This is something that we need to do to protect these industries, to get them money back in their pockets and get them flourishing again. And really, it's negligible what the impact on goods is going to be towards Americans. They're really trying to fearmonger it super hard right now, and it's kind of working well.
Yeah, and there was that video that, it kind of made its rounds around the internet where there was some guy, I forget what show he was on, but he was talking about, how much is it really going to affect the price of products on stuff. They brought up the point that, it's only going to raise the price of a car, like a $20,000 brand new car, by about $45. It's going to raise the price of a single can of, aluminum can of like beer or can of Coke by like 0.3 cents. And I think it was saying that a can of like tomato soup is going to get raised by like 2 cents or something like that. The price that gets passed on to the consumer is completely negligible. And you're absolutely right. They're fear-mongering.
In most instances, you won't see a price.
Yeah, you won't, because, you got to remember how these companies make their bottom line, okay? Take a simple can of Coke, for instance, okay? A price of that can range, depending on where you get it, can range anywhere between, maybe like 75 cents to like $2, depending on where you're at and stuff like that. And so the actual cost of the aluminum in the can, the cost to manufacture your overhead, plus the cost of the actual liquid inside it, that's only going to come to about, maybe 50 cents or so. Probably less than that. It's much less than that, isn't it?
The aluminum for like a can of Coke is about 3 cents worth.
Right.
In terms of like the liquid, because I've dealt with, like through various different jobs I've worked, you get the boxes on the liquid and stuff. It's not even a penny's worth for the liquid in the can.
Yeah.
And, if you put a 10% tariff on aluminum, you'd be increasing the cost of the aluminum per the can by about 0.3 of a penny.
Right, and that actually brings up a really good point before you continue. I just want to interject this. When people hear 10% tax on aluminum, they get gaslit and fearmongered into thinking that means the cost of your product is going to go up by 10 cents. They think the cost of a can of Coke is going to go up by 10%. That's not what they mean. The cost of the aluminum in the can, the 3 cents worth of aluminum, is going to go up by 10% relative to that cost. So 10% of 3 cents is 0.3 cents, okay? That's not even half of a penny, okay? And like I was saying, you said it's about maybe a cent or so is the actual amount of liquid that's in the can, plus a couple of cents for aluminum for the can. So we're talking maybe like what, 10 cents or so for the entire can of Coke, maybe.
It doesn't even cost 5 cents.
Yeah,
to
not
make
even
a can of
5
Coke
cents,
for
and
them.
yet people, obviously you have shipping costs, and you have costs that companies have to buy, places that you buy it at have to buy it and then sell it for themselves. So that makes sense. But that being said, your overall manufacturing cost of that thing, even if it went up by a penny, which sounds like a lot in compare when you're talking something that's only like maybe like 5 or 6 cents, a penny's difference is a significant increase.
It'll add up
by
but
percentage.
They still have very healthy profit margins.
Exactly.
Like,
it's not going to affect these companies at all.
is the profit margins of these companies, but
the amount of money
in most cases they're going to be fine.
I was going to say, plus the amount of money that they're saving on tax reform is well more than the amount more that they would have to spend on any sort of import tariff on aluminum or steel. So, if anything, you should be happy where we are right now. It's not like the costs are evening themselves out. Companies are still making a ton of money, and they're going to make a ton of money. And this is one of those things that you give it time, it might hurt us a little bit in the short run because obviously people are going to freak out and they're going to do things that you don't want them to do. But in the long run, the amount of jobs it's going to create here in the United States, the amount of companies that, could make steel are going to say, I might just want to make steel here in the U.S. instead. And, this is one of those things where I like the fact that I have a lot of libertarian roots, but I hate libertarians nowadays because a lot of them don't think these things through. They think, oh, you're putting a tariff on something. That's automatically bad. Well, how about you actually think through it? Think of all the different factors involved here. I mean, you were mentioning China earlier, okay? It's a well-known fact that a lot of the steel, that's imported from China, it goes through Canada, okay? Canada does not have a tariff on the steel imported from China, and the U.S. because of NAFTA doesn't have a tariff on what comes through Canada. So a lot of these companies are just using Canada as a pass-through to get the steel from China into the U.S. without having to worry about tariffs and stuff.
Yeah, the situation with Canada is we have a lot of anti-dumping laws in terms of Asian products. So what they do is they send the steel to Canada to where there are no protections against it because Canada is part of NAFTA. So all Canada is doing, and a significant part of the Canadian steel industry, doesn't even get their steel from Canada itself. It's just them getting a cut of the money of the steel before it goes to the United States. Like, we're just getting ripped off. And, it's about time that we stop getting ripped off, we start improving our own industries, and we keep the wealth in the nation as opposed to, as I said, being ripped off.
Yeah, they talk about, is it free trade, is it fair trade? Well, it's unfair trade is what we currently have when other countries are able to, tax exports from the U.S., but we can't be taxing any imports on there. We're getting screwed out of almost every single deal here. And so,
Well, keep this in mind. China is the biggest competitor in terms of steel to the United States. The Chinese steel industry is directly subsidized by the Chinese government. Like, it's not a free market there whatsoever. It isn't. The government is working on the behalf of these companies to outproduce and outcompete American companies. How are American companies supposed to compete if we do nothing to support them?
They can't.
We don't. And that's why steel and aluminum have, been deteriorating industries in the United States. So, it's the first step in, actually making America great again in building the industrial base that went overseas.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where it's states like Pennsylvania, it's states like Wisconsin that are going to directly benefit from this. I think, wasn't it the Democrat senator from Pennsylvania, what's his name, Bob Casey?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, he came out in support of this. You think that, a Democrat wouldn't want to support a Trump policy, but yet here he is because he knows exactly how much this is going to affect his state. Granted, it's also the fact that he has to run for re-election, and he knows that if he goes against something that's good for his state, it's going to hurt him in the midterm here. So that also plays into it. But at the same time, by doing so, you have to actually admit, yes, this is a good idea. It is going to help my state. It is going to help people in Pennsylvania. It is going to help people in Michigan and Wisconsin and the Rust Belt and all over the country, as, other companies start buying from American companies instead of buying from companies that have to import it and whatnot. Overall, it helps us. And
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, it might cause the stock market to go down 500 points today, but, when people start seeing the benefits, it's going to go back up next week.
Yeah. It might be a good topic to do for midweek in the future on tariffs. I would just need some time to prepare for it. I've read a lot on the subject, though.
If you want us to do that, then donate $10 a month on Patreon, and we'll do it. Tell us to do that. If you don't, then we'll just have to do it anyway.
If you want us to guaranteed to be doing that, donate and tell us to do it. But with that said, let's move on to some immigration stuff.
Open the door! Immigration!
¡Lo migra! ¡Vamos, niños!
This week in immigration.
All right, so the first story that we have up in immigration is Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court has unanimously declined the Trump administration request to speed up the DACA ruling. So, the Supreme Court on Monday rejected the Trump administration's request to speed up the DACA decision. The Department of Justice had asked the court to skip the usual appeals process and directly review a district court judge's ruling that struck down DACA's repeal. The court unanimously ruled that the DACA decision must go through the full regular appeals process before the Supreme Court can hear and then decide on the case. This decision also means that there is less pressure on Congress to provide any sort of legislative fix for DACA, which, barring any other appeals court decisions, which, at least one judge has already ruled against the administration. So, DACA, even though it's supposed to end on March 5th, which, at the time of recording is tomorrow, amazing it's been 6 months since this whole thing started, but, the thing is, they just say, hey, it's got to go through the normal appeals process. Now, it's currently going to go through the Ninth Circuit, so we know exactly how that first, how that first appeals court decision is exactly going to go.
Yeah. It'll be struck down.
Yeah, it's going to get struck down, or, at least the striking down of DACA is going to get struck down, meaning DACA is going to have to stay, which means they're going to have to keep accepting applications. They're going to have to keep accepting renewals, most likely. I hate the fact that we have to actually listen to these freaking judges all this time. But that being said, there's not much you can do. But we know that by the time it does get to the Supreme Court, they're going to rule in our favor. It would be an extreme disappointment and a very big shock if it didn't go in our favor to end DACA. So this is just one of those things where, congratulations, the left bought themselves an extra few months.
Yeah. But, it really has quieted all DACA talks.
Yeah, there's none of it. Well, a lot of it has to do with the gun issue, too, but, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and it pushes back, the need to have any sort of fix for DACA even further into the midterm process. So, the Supreme Court will end up receiving, the appeal for this repeal of DACA sometime this year. We'd probably imagine during the summer, maybe
that's
even
about the
into
same
the
time
fall.
frame, I'm thinking.
But that's just at the right time to really mess things up, because you can't be a Democrat in a swing area and do the legislative fix on DACA when your midterm election is just a month or two away. It puts them in a situation where they don't want this to come to a vote. And, I'm still very optimistic on DACA being struck down. It's terrible that we have to give them the extensions, and they're going to get to stay here for, an extra 2 years probably. But at the end of the day, they'll be going sometime soon.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to say before we go to the next immigration article here is that there were so many people who were celebrating as if the Supreme Court said that they were never going to hear the DACA case at all, meaning that it would stay with the decision that the current judge had it, which is, you have to keep DACA going, you have to keep accepting people to it. so many people were misled by that, and I really hate it when people, especially on the left, who are just not intellectually honest with themselves, to where they won't read something. They will just read the AP headline. They will just look at the CNN headline. They'll read the CNN story, and the CNN story cleverly won't mention that key fact there. So it's just one of those things where anytime you see something that looks like it's bad news, if you start really looking into it and reading what it actually says, there's probably something that's being spun there, just to let people know.
Yeah. Let's go on to the next story, though, for immigration. This also has to do with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court okays broad immigrant detention. The Supreme Court ruled Tuesday that immigrants detained for removal proceedings may be held indefinitely and are not entitled to a bail hearing. The court was reviewing a Ninth Circuit decision that said immigrants being held in detention must have a hearing every 6 months. The decision was 5-3, with Justice Alito delivering the opinion of the court. Justice Kagan had recused herself because she had participated in the case while serving the Obama administration. So, really, really great stuff. They don't have any rights to be here. They're not supposed to be here whatsoever. So, well, why do we got to give you a bail hearing? If we give you bail, you're just gonna hit the road. You have no reason to show up for your court hearing if you're given bail.
Yeah, and
that happens extensively when they do that.
Oh, it happens all the time. They arrest him. They say, "Here's your court date. Goodbye. Have a great time." They let him go, and it's like, okay, well, you're not really doing anything. They're not going to show up. But if anything, what this really does is it starts to establish a precedence that illegal aliens in this country don't have the same rights as we do. They don't have the same protections under the Constitution as we do, as they shouldn't. They're not citizens of the country. They're not supposed to be in this country. They shouldn't get the protections that this country offers for its people, because they're not this country's people. They're another country's people that are here, and they shouldn't be here. So it's little decisions like this that do go a long way in establishing that precedence. And again, once we get the DACA decision, that's really going to skyrocket that. But if the Supreme Court was going to rule against DACA, it sure as hell doesn't seem like they're moving any to the left, especially with decisions like this. At least Justice Kagan, I don't like her, but I will give her the credit for recusing herself. She was smart enough to actually do that. Probably would have been an uproar if she hadn't recused herself, even if the thing wouldn't have passed. So,
Yeah.
She did something right there. Now, that being said, once it comes to future Supreme Court cases regarding immigration, let's hope that Justice Ginsburg also recuses herself. She probably won't, but she should, depending on, given some of the comments that she made about Trump during the election herself. So I doubt she's going to do that. It appears that Justice Kagan has a little bit more integrity under her sleeve. So,
yeah. Let's move now on to some stuff out of Illinois. Illinois creates ID for illegal aliens that can be used to register to vote. A new municipal ID designed primarily for illegal aliens will be accepted in Chicago as a valid form of ID to register to vote. The card is part of a program called City Key, which is available to all Chicago residents regardless of immigration status, criminal record, housing status, or gender identity. Illinois state law does not require proof of citizenship to register to vote. So, the people that are, creating this program, they know what they're doing.
they know exactly what they're doing.
They know exactly what they're doing. It's also interesting that you can get this regardless of criminal record, because felons lose their right to vote as well. But this is just a by any means necessary use of the bureaucracy by the left to ensure their permanent control over their districts.
Yeah.
Which is why they brought these illegal aliens in to begin with. It's why Chicago is a sanctuary city. It's why Rahm Emanuel cares so goddamn much about them, because now the illegal aliens in Chicago can vote for things.
Yeah, and one of the
up.
I was going to say, one of the other things about this is, I think you and I both know that nationwide voter ID is something that's probably going to get implemented before the 2020 election. A lot of people don't think it is. I think there's going to be a lot of push, especially after the 2018 midterms, to get that in there. It's already got the support of a majority of the states in the country. And I think, it's another one of those things. This isn't the main intent, but it is a side intent. They know that if nationwide voter ID does get implemented, by making these programs where illegal aliens are getting IDs, they'll make sure that they're able to vote in the future, if that becomes the case. So once we do start pushing for once we start pushing for nationwide ID, we need to be really, really, really strict about exactly who we let vote and what forms of ID are allowed, and also who we let register to vote too. Because essentially in Illinois, all you have to do is check the box that says yes, I am a citizen. And even if you're an illegal immigrant, who's going to be the people investigating that? It's going to be the people at your in your state legislature, whoever they put in charge of that. And in a state like Illinois, it's going to be liberals too. So they're not going to investigate these things. They're not going to be looking into who's, illegals that are registered to vote using this program, who, committed voter fraud by registering to vote by checking the wrong box. They're not going to look into that, especially in a liberal state like Illinois.
Yeah. I am not optimistic to the point where I think nationwide ID laws would ever pass, but it is definitely something that would be needed. I mean,
there's going to be at least a big push for it. That's for sure.
Yeah, we've talked about in the past. There was a study on the 2008 election where they found around 5.7 million non-citizens voted in the election. This is stuff that happens all over the board, and this is one way that they're able to do this, what they're doing here in Chicago. And this isn't the only place that is doing stuff like this. But let's move on now to some stuff in regards to the border wall.
So we got some good news regarding the border wall, and that is first that a federal judge has actually ruled in its favor. So a federal judge ruled against an environmental challenge to the border wall, delivering a win to the Trump administration in a decision that will allow construction plans to move forward. District Court Judge Gonzalo Curiel wrote that both Congress and the President, quote, share responsibilities in protecting the country from terrorists and contraband illegally entering at the borders. The ruling will now allow the issuance of waivers on environmental laws and the construction of sections of the border wall. Curiel is the exact same judge that Trump accused of being biased against him during the 2016 campaign. So, this judge didn't recuse himself, but luckily he ruled in our favor there, didn't he?
Yeah, very surprising decision. These were waivers that were initially given during the Bush administration, and he could have easily said, no, you guys need to get new waivers. But he honored the waivers that were originally given back when, Bush had that 2006 Border Fence Act that passed. So, as we said of last week, we're already beginning construction on the border wall, currently working out in Calexico, California. And with these waivers, it's going to allow us to continue to expand the border wall in many different areas in the country.
Yeah, and, I guess we can use that as a segue to the next story that we have up. So, in regards to the border wall, we've awarded a $73 million contract for construction of the border wall in New Mexico. So the company that got the contract is the Montana-based Barnard Construction Company. They've been awarded $73 million to replace 20 miles of fence along the border in New Mexico. Federal officials have said that area remains an active route for human smuggling and drug trafficking. So, an environmental challenge might have made this company not be able to start construction, but we've awarded them the contract. We said we want you to replace this 20 miles of fence with actual wall in New Mexico. Granted, they're not going to start construction immediately, we know that, but the fact that we've given them the contract, we're moving forward with these things. People who said the wall isn't going to get built, if it wasn't going to get built, if they have no intention of building it, why are we having judges, challenge whether or not environmental rules need to be exactly followed 100%? Why are we having construction start in California? Why are we having prototypes built? Why are we awarding a $73 million contract to a company to replace 20 miles of fence in New Mexico? Okay, if the wall wasn't a serious thing, none of this would be happening. And I kind of use that to segue to my next story, and that is President Trump in March, so I guess, later this month, they said around mid-March, he's going to be making his very first trip to California as president, for the sole purpose of inspecting those border wall prototypes himself. Now, we talked about this on the show months ago, that Trump said he wanted to personally inspect the border wall prototypes, and it was around this exact same time period, around, February, March, April, sometime in here is when they were expected to have this happen. So again, we are staying exactly on the schedule that has been given months ago.
Yes. Yeah, no, we haven't fallen off, the timetables that we've been, talking about for months in regards to where we're supposed to be. And, Trump is going out here in mid-March to check out the border prototypes. And, upcoming, we have a new omnibus package that needs to be passed. And in that package, as part of DHS, they have allocated money for the border wall. So Trump can really use going to these prototypes as his platform to say, look at how phenomenal these walls are. We need to get this passed. And we're going to be in a good place to actually do that.
Yes.
Get some more money to build some walls.
So that's some really good news that's going forward, and I'm glad that, I hate the fact that we have these big ominous spending bills, but, if you can once in a while work something in that does benefit you, it doesn't seem as bad, even though it's still pretty bad.
Without any government shutdowns over it either, though.
Well, hey, I'm glad the government shut down. That was awesome. But I guess we can use that and just go to the next story then, can't we?
Yeah. ICE arrests 150 in the Bay Area. Mayor could be charged. More than 150 illegals were arrested this week in Northern California, despite the Oakland mayor's warning of raids ahead of time. Roughly half of those arrested have convictions of assault and battery, crimes against children, weapons charges, and or DUIs. One of those arrested is 38-year-old Armando Nunez Salgado, a Mexican national who has spent more than 15 combined years in prison and has previously been deported 4 times. He's a member of the Sueño street gang. Because of the mayor's warnings, 800 criminal aliens who ICE had hoped to arrest escaped. The Department of Justice is looking into whether Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf can face federal charges after she warned illegal aliens of an impending enforcement sweep. So, what happened there was ICE, the federal agents, were working to communicate with the police that were there in Oakland. So they gave them the information on when they were going to do these raids. They thought in good faith that they could trust the people working there. But when the mayor, Schaaf, got word of this, she just went on TV and said, it's time to run. ICE raids are coming. And the people she protected are predominantly criminal aliens. Predominantly, of the 800 that got away.
Yeah.
And, she said that on TV that, what keeps Oakland safe? It's by keeping families together. Who are the families of these criminal, gang members and drug dealers and rapists? Like, why are these people that need to be protected? It's insane. And she aided and abetted criminal aliens. She can go to jail for a very long time. 800 counts of that.
And she should go to jail. I mean, I'm glad it's just one of those things where it's like, Jeff Sessions, what are you doing? Well, at least, the Department of Justice looking into whether they can charge her with federal charges. That's great news. And that's something that we need to continuously do. I would like them to set an example for the rest of the country. Make an example out of Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf. Throw her in jail. Give her 800 counts of aiding and abetting criminal aliens in this country. You start doing that to 1, 2, maybe 3 people here and there, other people will fall in line. They will start obeying your laws. I mean, right now, California, I've said it before in the show, I'm going to say it again, California is barely even a state in this country anymore. It's essentially a country of its own. They're not obeying federal laws. They're ignoring federal laws. They're creating their own laws. They're already a sanctuary state. There's nothing that California has that's keeping it in the United States right now. Everything that they want as a state is contrary to what the rest of the country wants as a country. And so at some point you're going to start dealing with a constitutional crisis. And one of the things you can do to help calm that situation down is throw her ass in jail. That's all I have to say about that.
And by her warning these aliens of the incoming ice raids, not only did it make their job harder, it made it much more dangerous.
Yeah, because now they know you're coming. Now they can wait for you. Now they can shoot back at you. If they don't know you're coming, they're not going to have a chance to defend themselves.
Yeah, they have forewarning to attack these agents. It's really messed up, and violating federal law has consequences. So hopefully we see some in the coming months. Let's go now on to one of the more humorous immigration stories that we have this week. Probably one of the funniest
I like
we've had
it.
in quite a while. Dreamers marched 250 miles to rally and get arrested. 6 activists, including 5 illegal aliens, participated walk to stay home for the 6-month anniversary of Trump's decision to end DACA. The 15-day march was a walk from New York City to Washington, D.C., a route of over 250 miles crossing 6 states. The illegals, all DACA recipients, were arrested outside of city limits for blocking traffic. They missed out on the pro-DACA rally held in front of the Supreme Court building.
I will say at least one thing for them. They're probably going to get deported now, but at least they'll be in shape, right?
Well, they do have the DACA protections, but the one thing that is funny is, the liberals will always say, oh, these people are the best, they commit less crime than you, except...
You don't see me blocking traffic.
When they get arrested for blocking traffic.
Yeah, and when we say blocking traffic, they have pictures of them. They're literally sitting in the middle of the street with their signs laid out in front of them. They weren't even they were sitting in traffic, intentionally blocking it.
Yeah, how ungrateful are these people? They're in a country they don't belong in. And not only are they here, but they're causing trouble for the people that are actually supposed to be here. It's insane. Want to go on now to the very last thing for immigration?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So this is kind of a staggering thing that we learned about this week. But that is the U.S. has given $2 billion in tax breaks to companies to hire alien graduates over Americans. The U.S. government's optional practical training program, or OPT, gives tax breaks to American companies to employ foreign graduates over Americans, was awarded $1.98 billion in favor of 240,000 alien college graduates over an equal number of U.S. resident graduates. The study was conducted by the Center for Immigration Studies, saying that, quote, employers of foreign students who have a degree from a U.S. institution are given an 8.25% tax break if they hire an alien rather than a U.S. college grad with the same skills and paid the same salary. Taking the 240,000 multiplied by roughly 50,000 a year for jobs comes out to around $12 billion not being paid to American college graduates.
And this is just one program, too. We've got tons of different programs that are like this. And,
this is a program that was instituted during the Obama administration. Keep in mind.
And, it's kind of confusing as to the way it works. So, essentially, if a company hires someone, they have to pay them a certain amount of money. And, obviously, they have to pay a certain amount of money in, federal taxes like, Social Security, Medicare, those sort of taxes. Well, that 8.25% tax break comes off of that, if you're wondering where exactly that comes from. And if you add up the 8.25% tax breaks for all these 240,000 people, that's what came out to $1.98 billion. So the United States government is directly subsidizing the hiring of alien graduates over Americans.
That's
essentially what's coming to.
Displacement of American citizens
exactly.
in the American workforce.
I mean,
we are rewarding people, not hiring Americans.
Yeah, and the people that they're hiring are probably people that are going to take less of a smaller salary than an American graduate would be willing to take anyway. So they're doubling up. Not only do they have to pay people less, they also get to get a little tax break for it as well.
Yeah, this stuff really plays into what Trump has done with his hire American, buy American executive order that he did at the beginning of his administration, and also the new stuff he's doing with H-1B visas. Trump is doing well to fight for American workers, and this is the stuff that he was up against, from the previous administration. But it's important that we get these jobs to Americans. And, they always like to say, the liberals, like, oh, immigrants aren't taking your jobs. But look at the billions of dollars lost to Americans because of this one program. Like, of course they're taking your jobs. It's very obvious.
They're being directly subsidized to take your jobs.
Yeah.
Directly, like not even indirectly. Like the entire point of this is for that.
Yeah. It's really insane, and I don't even know how a leftist could even justify such a policy.
Well, they don't want...
Unless they just hate Americans.
Which they do, but, we're starting to get... You start getting into topics like that, and that can go all over the place, so...
Yeah.
Anyways, I guess we can move on to our next section, which we only have one story for the elections this year, or at least for this week, and that is a major story out of Pennsylvania where it appears that according to the testimony submitted Monday in a lawsuit, it's revealed that more than 100,000 non-citizens are registered to vote in the state of Pennsylvania. State officials have admitted that non-citizens have been registered and were voting in the state, quote, for decades. The 100,000 number comes from testimony given by Philadelphia Commissioner Al Schmidt, who revealed a quote-unquote glitch in the state's motor vehicle bureau system that allows non-citizens applying to renew driver's licenses to be offered the chance to register to vote. The Public Interest Legal Foundation had identified similar non-citizen voting problems in studies of both Virginia and New Jersey. So, 100,000 non-citizens registered to vote in Pennsylvania. Who knows how many of them actually voted in elections? We know the number, it's at least one, because they said that people have been voting in the state for decades. It's probably not all 100,000, but I would not be surprised to figure out that that's a significant number of that. Remember, Trump won Pennsylvania by what, was it 20,000 or 60,000 votes? One of those?
It was very close either way. I think it was 20,000.
Yeah, 20,000. I guarantee you, at least if these people are non-citizens registered to vote in Pennsylvania, at least 20,000 of them probably ended up actually voting. And we know that they weren't voting for Republicans. So right there, you've already doubled your margin of victory if you don't allow these people to continue to vote, which unfortunately, they're probably going to continue to vote.
Like, the crazy thing is, we're supposed to be up in arms about how the Russians are subverting our democracy, how they're hurting our democracy. But here's an instance where 100,000 citizens' votes are, canceled out because 100,000 non-citizens have the ability to vote when they're not supposed to. And, they said that they also had these problems in Virginia and New Jersey. Okay, looking at Pennsylvania, they don't really have a very large immigrant population there, but there's some states that have much more than Pennsylvania does. Virginia in particular, especially.
Virginia's already gone blue because of immigration and other replacements of citizens.
And looking at how the results went out there in Virginia, we saw the big. They didn't get to take complete control of the legislature there. They had to take it down to a coin toss, and the Republicans retained. But I mean, they definitely gained a ton of seats there, and we can only guess how many of the seats were acquired by non-citizens voting.
Especially in Northern Virginia, in Nova.
We can safely guess that there's thousands of them doing that. And how is this not a threat to our democracy? This is foreign subversion of our elections.
So yeah.
But when it benefits Democrats, it doesn't matter.
But what's important is the fact that stories like this are coming out, okay? They're being published, we now know about this stuff, and all it does is it really does fuel the fire for any other states that want to try to pass laws to make sure that people that shouldn't be voting aren't voting, and people that shouldn't be registering to vote aren't registering to vote. And so it does go a long way. It's stories like this, and it really does fly in the face of the left's whole, voter fraud never happens. If voter fraud doesn't happen, why are 100,000 people that aren't even citizens of this country registered to vote in a single state alone? Okay? And if that's how it is in Pennsylvania, we know a state like California, it's going to be way more than that.
Yeah. They don't even say like it doesn't happen a lot. They say it never
happens at all.
Doesn't happen whatsoever. By you suggesting that it happens, you're actually instilling doubt in our institutions, and you're hurting our democracy. That's the way that they propose it. But hey, I just want to get the 100,000 non-citizens registered to vote out of the electoral process.
And out of the country, too. If you're a non-citizen who gets caught voting, you should automatically lose all rights to even be here. Like, that's automatic deportation in my sense.
Yeah, we definitely need to be...
no appeals court process, no nothing. Fuck that shit. Just get them out of the country. If they don't want to say where they're from, just take a map of the world, blindfold yourself, take a dart, throw it at the map, wherever it lands, that's where you stick them.
Yeah.
But anyways...
From there, let's move on to the bottom of the stack stuff.
The first thing...
We got a lot of stuff on guns.
Yeah, we're the way this is kind of going to work here is we've got a bunch of different stories about guns, and then that's kind of going to segue over to some other stories about, more specifically, about the Parkland shooting. But... it's going to essentially start here with guns. So the first story we have up is, Republicans that actually have some balls. And that's the Georgia lawmakers have yanked Delta's tax benefits for cutting the ties with the NRA. So the Georgia lawmakers voted to get rid of a tax benefit for the Atlanta-based Delta Airlines after they decided to cut ties with the NRA. The bill passed with an overwhelming 135 to 24 vote in the state House and passed 44 to 10 in the state Senate, was signed into law by Georgia Governor Nathan Deal. The new law drops a jet fuel tax exemption worth $50 million. Now, Delta had originally given a small discount to NRA members, but after cutting ties with the NRA by not allowing that discount anymore, it was revealed that only 18 people have ever actually used that discount. $50 million is a large price to pay for virtue signaling.
And they're not going to get that money back from liberals, supporting them in the wake of them cutting ties with the NRA. Like, whoever came up with the idea to do this, terrible decision making on your part, and really it's a warning for other companies to do stuff like this.
And the CEO of Delta, I think he went out there and he said something like, we want to try to remain neutral, and that's why we cut ties with the NRA. No, if you wanted to remain neutral, you stay there and you don't say anything. You hope that no one finds out you even have a discount for the NRA to begin with. That's how you remain neutral in it. You go against the NRA, you're going to pay the price. You're going to pay $50 million.
Yeah.
So, but in regards to this entire gun issue, obviously, the articles we have here they're not really all over the place, but one of the things you need to keep in mind through this entire process is any sort of gun legislation or any gun control measures or anything has to go through Congress. It means it has to go through both the House and the Senate. And Mitch McConnell is actually doing something good for a change. He announced on Thursday that the Senate will not be discussing any gun reform measures anytime soon. Instead, he said the Senate would be focusing next week on a banking bill that aims to make changes to the Dodd-Frank law. The move signals doubts that any bipartisan gun laws would pass the House and the Senate. The closest possibility of any bill that's actually been presented is a bill that is co-authored by our very own Senator John Cornyn from Texas that would improve reporting to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, which is the NICS, that would offer financial incentives to state and local authorities for reporting info to the NICS. Cornyn predicted that if brought to a vote, his bill would get 80 votes in the Senate. So, McConnell's saying, we're not even going to bring up gun control in the Senate at all. What are you talking about? We've got more important things to do. We don't got time for gun control. It's an election year. We're Republicans. Are you crazy? Like we're actually going to vote on anything about guns.
Yeah, especially since everyone is watching on the issue of guns right now. The two big issues coming into these midterms has become immigration and gun control.
And that's both things that Republicans are vastly favored more than Democrats when it comes to who people want to actually control those type of things.
Yeah, we don't need to get into the polls on that.
Yeah,
right now. We've gone into it on many occasions, but yeah, McConnell doesn't need any sort of voting on this stuff going on. It doesn't benefit them whatsoever. They have no reason to do anything, and nothing's going to come of this. And The same can be said for the House. I mean, Ryan didn't say anything, but they don't want to vote on stuff like this either.
The House has a worse chance than the Senate does, because at least every member of the House is up for re-election. Only a third of the Senate is, and most of them are Democrats
have even
anyways.
less incentive to vote on something as contentious as gun control.
Yeah, and before we go to the next story, I kind of want to hit on just the whole Trump himself and talking about gun control and all this sort of stuff. And there's so many people have so many different theories as to what Trump was doing. Was he trying to play 4D chess? Was he just being an idiot? Was he legitimately trying to pass some gun control measures? It can go all over the place, but all I'm going to say is gun control is going nowhere. The entire talk of gun control and even the Parkland shooting itself, they pushed that so hard for 2 weeks, and it's died down all of a sudden. You ever notice that in the last 3 or so days, no one's talking about gun control? No one's talking about the Parkland shooting anymore?
Well, it's because the story is really unraveled.
Yeah.
We now know about the officers not going in and stopping the shooting.
And I mean, we're going to talk about the Parkland shooting more here, in the next segment right after we're talking about just guns in general. But I just want to hit on Trump was in there and he's having these meetings. He's all we'll take the guns first and then give the due process. And he really pissed off his base. And it took the NRA themselves going into the White House and talking sense into him to the point where he started to finally back off. And, a lot of people, like I said, they got, what was Trump's goal in this? I personally think one of two things is the possibility. And remember, he's not a dumb guy. He does make some dumb decisions, but he's not a dumb guy. He thinks things through. I think this was probably just his, inexperience with being a politician and how to actually deal with situations like this. Because this is really Trump, with the exception of the Vegas shooting, this is really Trump's first mass shooting at a school. I mean, can you think of any that have happened under Trump? At least to this degree. I mean, the only other ones that are this big, big shootings like this that we talk about, with the exception of Vegas, you got Sandy Hook, Columbine, and I think maybe Virginia Tech, Fort Hood, and Aurora, Colorado. And even then, there's many more that we're not talking about, but these are just the ones that the ones that really, really, really made national attention. The stories died down. You're absolutely right. But the other thing that I wanted to say was, if Trump was actually trying to play some sort of 4D chess move in whatever he was doing, trying to push quote-unquote gun control, what you said earlier was exactly right. The two most important issues to voters coming into the midterms is gun control and immigration. And one of the things that we do have to worry about in terms of the 2018 midterm elections is we know that the Democrats, their base is fired up. They are extremely energized. And granted, the elections tend to be favoring us right now, the way things are set up and who's running where and whatnot. One thing we cannot get complacent about is that main fact. The Democrats are very, very energized. We need to make sure our base is energized too. If they get complacent, they don't show up, every single election across the country is going to look what Alabama happened. It's going to look exactly like that. And that's what happens if Republicans don't show up and vote. And so if this was some sort of 4D chess move, it was to piss off the base enough to expose the left for who they are and being anti-gun, and making sure that his base is energized to actually get out there and save their Second Amendment rights by voting for Republicans. That's the closest thing I can come, and even that I don't think is actually what he was actually trying to do.
I think he was just being stupid. I can't defend the statements that he made. They're just dumb. It hurts support for him. All week I've been thinking about, during the election, he was given the endorsement of the NRA. And
early on.
About, that I'm the guy that's going to protect your guns. But now he's talking about gun control without making... Not only is he talking about gun control, but he's not even getting any concessions for things that we would want. It's ridiculous. And he hasn't said anything past, his little statement on taking the guns, but it's just kind of scary that he even talks about things like this. Hopefully, nothing comes of this.
Yeah,
as we said, we don't think any legislation will come, and hopefully people just forget about this. But definitely not smart.
I will say that I do think that people, especially people in Trump's base, will forget about it. And the reason I say that is because, number one, he is starting to backtrack after the NRA actually went in there and talked to him. They had that little luncheon or dinner or whatever they had there. So he is starting to backtrack the gun control talk. His base is pissed off. They've let him know that they're pissed off. He doesn't like it when his base is pissed off. And every single time his base gets pissed off, he does backtrack to where he was. And so, it's one of those things. Yeah, I like the guy, and I'm going to vote for him again, but you do need to hold his feet to the fire when he does stupid stuff like this. And so that's exactly what we've seen. He's starting to backtrack, and nothing's going to come of this, as we said. The House isn't going to do anything. The Senate's not going to do anything. If they're not going to do anything, then nothing's going to happen. It's political suicide for him to continue talking, and that's what they told him. That's why he hasn't said anything more, and he just stopped talking about it. So, if he was to continue to talk about it and just keep boom, 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 making that a big issue, then it's like, Trump, what are you doing? You need to stop. So the fact that he's already stopped, I think he went a little bit too far in terms of how long he kept it up, but he did stop, and as long as he doesn't bring it up again, I can forgive him for that if I can convince myself that it was just his stupidity at being, not very, experienced at this type of situation. So that's really all I have to say about that. But in terms of going on to the next story here, again, remember, nothing's going to happen. And that also, not only is that good for the right, it's also good for the left, because they get to expose themselves as being the anti-gun people that they are, especially with this new House bill that was introduced by Representative David Cicilline, from a Democrat from Rhode Island. And it's supported by 164 House Democrats, okay? That's over half of the House Democrats have signed on in support of this bill. If you're asking what it does, it bans semi-automatic firearms. Which ones? All of them. The bill prohibits, quote, the sale, transfer, production, and importation of semi-automatic rifles and pistols that can hold a detachable magazine, as well as semi-automatic rifles with a magazine that can hold more than 10 rounds. The bill also bans the sale, transfer, production, and importation of semi-automatic shotguns with features such as pistol grips and detachable stocks, or ammunition feeding devices that can hold more than 10 rounds. The bill also names 205 specific firearms that are prohibited, including the AK-47 and AR-15. That is the worst bill that could ever happen to gun rights in America, and it's supported by 164 House Democrats. It would literally ban every single weapon you can think of, with the exception of revolvers.
It would ban most weapons.
It would ban almost everything. Granted, it says sale, transfer, production, importation. What it doesn't say is ownership, and they know that if you start putting the word ownership, then, that's immediately, even, a lot of Democrats even say, okay, you start banning ownership, then that's a big question. So they're able, knowing that nothing is going to happen, they're able to put their names in a bill like this. They're able to outwardly say, I am anti-gun. I want to take your guns. I don't want you to own these weapons. I don't want you to own any weapons. Because we said...
It plays into the field at hand for the primaries for these Democrats at the moment. There is a record number of competitors running for Democratic the primaries. So they're trying to show how left they really are. They want to be able to say, look at me, I'm taking the gun situation seriously. They're going to fight to push themselves to the left. But the problem is, they're pushing themselves to a support group that is a very vocal minority,
right?
But it's also a very small minority. Like, Democrats always lose on these gun issues. There's a lot of Democrats that still care about gun rights.
Yeah, I mean, look at
we're only talking about a portion of the United States that's like 20% that would want to do something like this legitimately. Ban semi-automatic weapons to the extent that they're talking about.
Yeah, and the problem is, as we said, that base that wants to do that is extremely energized. I mean, I guess we can go to the next story here. There's a poll here. I guess you can read it just to see exactly how much Democrats actually think about that. Yeah.
A new YouGov poll shows that 82% of Democrats favor banning some semi-automatic weapons. Only 13% of Democrats do not. When specifically asked about banning all handguns, Democrats are split, with 44% favoring a ban and 46% opposing a ban. When asked if they want to repeal the Second Amendment, Democrats were split, with 39% wanting a repeal and 41% opposing a repeal. So as I said, when you break that down into think about the percentage of the people in the country that are Democrats, and then you think about the percentage of that would want to say repeal the Second Amendment. We're only talking about like 15-20% of the country.
Yeah.
But still, these numbers are pretty staggering.
Yeah, and I kind of want to go back to what you said about how they want to prove to themselves that I'm more left than you are. This is exactly what I've been saying on the show, repeatedly for the last several months that we've been doing this. In the Democrat primary, they're going to force themselves farther left. What they're doing is they're abdicating the middle. The people that are centrists, the people that are independents, those people are voting Republican. And if you start pushing, repeal the Second Amendment, ban guns, great, that gets your base out. But like average everyday people are going to be like, no, I don't want that. I'm going to vote for the guy who's running against you. If that happens to mean that they have an R next to their name, then so be it.
Yeah, a platform for the midterms of open borders and taking away guns is not going to win that much.
Especially when we've seen polls showing just how much, what people really think about immigration and what people really think about, like, gun control laws. I will say the left is only correct about one thing, and that's when they say that a majority of Americans favor changes to the background check system. That is true across, almost every poll that you can go and you can find of. There is, depending on how you word it, it's almost always a majority of Americans do say that they favor some sort of change to the background check system. Granted, what that change actually is varies from person to person and group to group, question to question, but that's about the only thing that Democrats have to stand on in terms of being anti-gun that could actually do anything in the country.
But if people were actually made aware of what would come about if you change the background checks to what they are saying, you'd see the number go down.
Exactly.
Even more so. So, let's just move on, though. A Kentucky school district this week voted to allow teachers to carry firearms. The Pike County School Board voted unanimously on Monday to allow the Pike County Sheriff's Office to oversee a program that would formally allow teachers and staff to conceal carry at schools. Under the new proposal, school employees could volunteer to serve as concealed carry guards throughout the county. Each volunteer would be subjected to a background check, drug test, mental evaluation, and qualification course, including firearms training led by the Sheriff's Office, which offered to provide training for free. The Sheriff's Office also said they will perform unannounced inspections to ensure the firearms are properly concealed and the employees are in compliance with the program's guidelines. Pike County is located at the far eastern tip of Kentucky and voted 80% for President Donald Trump.
So this is good news, and I really do hope it works out for them. And one of the things I really do like about what they're doing is exactly how they're going about it. They're still requiring people to have a background check, do a drug test, mental evaluation, blah, blah, blah. They still got to go through qualifications. They're still going to, have the sheriff's office looking over them. It's not like they're just saying, okay, if you're a teacher and you want to carry a gun, go right ahead. No, they're doing this the right way. And I would like to see programs like this implemented all over the country, if not the entire country. But I am a huge fan of the way that they're going about it, if I could have my takeaway from this story here.
Yeah, most definitely. And, I have experience teaching in the classroom. It's not something I'm doing right now, but, if I was back in the classroom again and it was offered to me to conceal carry, I would definitely take up the offer. I don't think most teachers would, but if someone wants to do it, I think that we should allow them to do it. It's free, protection for the students. But let's move on to some of the stuff that has happened out in Florida in regards to gun legislation. So, Florida lawmakers shot down an amendment to ban semi-automatic weapons such as the AR-15. They did, however, raise the age to purchase a firearm to 21 years of age. We've seen a lot of talk about raising the age to 21 to buy firearms. I mean, as it currently stands, you need to be 21 to buy a handgun.
Yeah.
But this includes rifles as well.
And shotguns.
Lawmakers also passed a bill that would give teachers the right to carry weapons. The bill is expected to be signed by Florida Governor Rick Scott next week. So, kind of bad with how gun legislation went in Florida this week. But I don't know. It's good that they got the bill to allow teachers to carry firearms because if there was teachers that had firearms in the Parkland shooting incident, at least someone would have had a gun in the building to stop the shooter, unlike what went down when you left it to the police officers.
I mean, yeah, wasn't there that one coach that a bunch of people said that if he had a gun, he would have grabbed it and tried to use it on the kid, and that coach ended up getting killed.
Yep.
So that's a direct person that could have done so in this exact situation that we're talking about. So there's one more school district that we can talk about here, and that's there's a school district in Illinois. Illinois' Century School District is moving to arm their teachers as a way to ensure kids are safe from potential attackers. School board member Keith Clark said, quote, "We arm our Brinks trucks because we hold value in it. We appoint security to guard our legislatures, to guard our movie stars, but yet our most valuable asset in society are our children, and we do nothing." And that district also lies in the southern tip of Illinois, in a county that voted 61% for Trump. So, you can see kind of across the board, it's these more like rural conservative areas that are even allowing this. And those are places where I trust the school districts to be able to actually make good decisions like this. Like, you really think that, and I hate to be playing to the left's hands here, but do you really think it's a good idea for your average teacher at some like inner city Chicago school to have a gun on them, with students knowing that they have a gun on them or in the classroom, compared to an area like this in southern Illinois or in Pike County,
if they're
Kentucky?
Concealed carry, would they know? How would the students know?
Students find out that sort of stuff, dude. Students find out that sort of stuff.
If I was concealed carrying in the classroom, that's
students
not
know.
tell a student.
Teachers will tell students. Students will find out. They'll see it. The students will figure it out, unless it's like hidden and locked in like their desk. Students are going to find out. And I'm in favor of arming the teachers. Don't get me wrong. But if I have to choose where do I want to implement these policies first, it's going to be districts like this Illinois district here, or that district in Kentucky out there. Those are places where if you can prove that it works out there, which, I mean, let's face it, it's going to work in places like that. If you can prove it works there, then you can try to get that in other areas. Again, I hate to play into the left's hand. I'm not trying to do it. But if I had to choose one area over another to first implement the policy, it would be in the places that are implementing it to begin with.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next gun story.
So we're going to talk about a couple of companies here that have decided to do some gun stuff. And the first up is Dick's Sporting Goods announced Wednesday that they will immediately be ending the sale of all assault-type rifles. Now, again, I'm saying assault-type rifles. There's no such thing as an assault rifle. I'm just writing down what the article said, reading it off of that, so just bear with me. They're going to immediately be ending the sale of all assault-type rifles sold in their stores. They also said that they'd no longer sell high-capacity magazines and wouldn't sell a gun to anyone under the age of 21, regardless of local laws. In 2012, after the Sandy Hook shooting, Dick's Sporting Goods removed assault-type rifles from its main retail stores, but a few months later they started carrying them at its outdoor and hunting retail chain known as Field and Stream. This time, they said the changes will be permanent. So, Dick's Sporting Goods is like the main company that's kind of done stuff. I know Walmart's done something too, we're going to talk about here in a second, but Dick's Sporting Goods is the one that really has kind of made the news for trying to ban weapons. And, this is one of those things where I have to kind of counter libertarian arguments. Libertarians would be like, it's a private company, they can do whatever they want. Well, if you're an 18-year-old in an area where 18-year-olds are legally allowed to purchase and own weapons, and you go into a store and they say, sorry, you're not 21, company policy, there's a big chance where you can go against these and say, hey, you're breaking you are breaking the law. You're not upholding my rights. It's one of the same things that the left tries to use in the whole Christian Baker argument. Is it you got to bake the cake, or is it you have the right to refuse service? This is them right to refuse service. The left is applauding Dick's Sporting Goods. I'm just trying to point out I'm pointing out their hypocrisy here.
It's a violation of their civil rights to deny them the ability to purchase the firearm if they meet the federal, age to buy the firearm. Now, Dick's Sporting Goods is the store where Nicholas Cruz got his AR-15, so that is of note. probably why they're freaking out over this.
Well, did he get it there, or did he get it at Field and Stream? Because they haven't sold actual, quote-unquote assault rifles in their stores since 2012. So if he got it at a Dick's Sporting Goods, it had to have been a Field and Stream store, not actually Dick's.
I believe he got it at Dick's Sporting Goods, but one thing that has come out is he wasn't using high-capacity magazines.
No, he wasn't.
In his firearm. So why are you banning these magazines?
Because they think it's going to make a difference. I mean, what's the definition of high-capacity magazine? That means different things to different people. There's no, as far as I know, there's no legal definition of what high-capacity magazine means. Is it 10? Is it more than 10 rounds?
That's more than 10. That's a
high-capacity magazine. Yeah, I mean, like, I have a rifle. I have a 40-round mag and I have a 30-round mag. Are those high-capacity magazines? A 30-round magazine. A 30-round magazine is standard issue for a rifle when you buy it. That's the thing. So, are you going to define it as, is standard issue all of a sudden what's going to be banned? Or are you going to ban anything higher than that? It's so many questions. Again, it's one of those things. I'm glad nothing's going to happen legislatively. The problem is, companies do have this power to do stuff like this. Companies have the power to deny you your civil rights. I mean, look at what Facebook and Twitter and YouTube are doing to conservatives right now. They're banning, free speech on the internet. Why? Because we allow companies to do things like this. Again, I like the fact that I have libertarian roots when it comes to free market, but when it comes to the whole, should you have to follow the law, or should companies have the chance? If you're denying people civil rights, especially in the United States, when the United States Constitution, in the Bill of Rights, in the Second Amendment, guarantees you the right to own firearms, you shouldn't be able to deny people that exact right. It would be like saying we're going to deny people their free speech as a company. Well, then, you can't do anything. So that's, I tend to actually fall on the side of, if the companies are 100% denying your free speech, 100% denying your other civil rights, like Dick's Sporting Goods is doing, you should counter that. And, to kind of go on to the...
move on, though.
Yeah, I was going to move on anyways. But, Walmart, they also announced that they are going to be no longer selling firearms to people under 21. Now, technically speaking, Walmart actually had quit selling quote-unquote assault rifles back in 2015 due to low demand, and instead they've decided to focus on handguns and small hunting rifles, which are available in every store which are available in stores across every state except for Alaska. Walmart, however, has never ever sold high-capacity magazines, so at least for them, they don't have to worry about the whole high-capacity magazine debate. But according to the New York Times, Walmart will also end the sale of airsoft guns that resemble an assault rifle, and will also rid their shelves of toy rifles that resemble AR-15s and AK-47s. Humorously, however, Twitter users noticed that this included Nerf rifles as well. And there were pictures of them actually taking Nerf guns off the shelves because of this. So
it's just it's
hilarious.
It's getting really absurd, okay? If your store doesn't want to sell AR-15s, okay, that's you. But being afraid to sell airsoft guns and Nerf rifles and toy guns, they're instilling this fear in the public around even the idea of firearms that's just absurd. These guns don't kill people just by existing. And, people aren't going to die because there's kids playing with airsoft guns. That doesn't lead... a kid buying an airsoft gun and playing with it doesn't somehow put him on the path to become a school shooter. It's just what's going on?
No, and I've even seen polls that, I think it was... I've seen polls that said that millennials actually are against gun control more than even Generation X was. And I'd love to see that. I'd love to see statistics for Generation Z. I mean, Generation Z is supposed to be one of the most conservative generations we've ever had. Granted, we'll figure that out once they actually grow up and get to vote. But the whole you can't sell firearms to people under 21. Thank God I'm over 21, so this doesn't apply to me. But a lot of these places are said that they're making exception, or they're thinking about making exceptions for people that are in the military. Because, you can join the military at 18. If you can go and get sent to some shithole country and shoot at terrorists using a rifle, you should be able to buy one and own it here in the United States as well. We'll see where that is. One thing
that's been kind of on my mind in terms of this idea of changing the ages on these firearms is, think about rural communities. Like
Yeah.
on a lot of farms, it's the response. You need to keep a weapon to protect your livestock. Are we somehow disqualifying kids from the age of 18 to 21 from even using these weapons to do so? Like people aren't thinking about the repercussions of doing stuff like this. It's kind of insane.
And it's hilarious. The same people are saying, 18-year-olds shouldn't be allowed to buy guns. They should be wait till they're 21 to be more mature. Yet at the same time, they're like, you should lower the voting age to 16. Well, you can't have it one way or another. Either everything's got to be 21 or everything's going to be 16. If I had to choose anything there, I'd say raise the voting age to 21 if you're going to make, the sale of weapons be 21 across the country as well. You start doing that, they'll backtrack on that fast.
Yeah. I'd rather just change all the ages to buy firearms to 18.
Yeah, I know. I would
can't you
too.
have a handgun? Like, are we stopping mass shootings because they weren't able to buy a weapon, a particular one, till they're 21? I don't think so.
No, I mean, most mass shootings, most gun violence in the country is done by handguns anyways. Vast majority of that is gang related. You look at deaths by firearm and whatnot.
And then
rifles,
a good number is suicides.
Yeah, and a good number is a majority are either gang related or suicides. The actual number of quote unquote murders that are done that are what we consider to be murders, not gang related, not suicides, it's a very, very small portion of all gun related deaths. And even then, the vast majority of those are committed by handguns. So, you talk about, we're going to raise the age to own a rifle. You're not changing anything. The amount of people, if you look at every single gun-related death in the U.S., the amount that's killed by rifles of any sort is 1%, less than 1%. It's a very, very small number. You're not doing anything. You're virtue signaling is what they're doing. They're virtue signaling and making it harder for people to exercise their basic human rights. That's exactly what they're doing. Now, granted, I will say one thing. I've never gone to Walmart to buy a gun. I've never even bought ammo at a Walmart because I have much better stores that can do it at cheaper prices and give better deals and better options. So, a lot of people didn't even know that Walmart even sold weapons. I only know that because it's right next to the camping section.
At Walmart, though. So I guess I can't do that anymore.
Hey, I always go to Academy or stores like that.
Yeah, Academy's a better store to do that.
There was the joke that was going around that during the Obama administration, you could never get 22 ammunition. And then once Trump got elected, 22 ammunition was just everywhere. And that's exactly true. And granted, I was hearing some people have said that a lot of gun stores are sold out just because, every time there's a shooting and then there's gun control talk, people scramble to the stores to buy them up just in case they start banning them. I've never actually done that, but I would love to go to the local gun store here in town and just talk to them and see what their sales have been like recently. If I get the chance to, I'll do that.
I am very eager to buy a firearm very soon. Probably in the next I will. But let's keep moving though. We got a good story out of California.
Yeah, this one's hilarious too.
Regards to someone this is a guy that might be able to sell me a gun. Well, not anymore. But prominent anti-gun Bay Area politician Leland Yee, 67 years of age, has been sentenced to prison for his role in weapons trafficking, accepting bribes, and extorting money. Yee had previously been president of the San Francisco School Board before running for office, and in 2004 became the Speaker pro tempore and the second highest ranking Democrat in the California State Assembly. He was named to the Gun Violence Prevention honor roll by the Brady campaign. He passed a bill to require new semi-automatic handguns be equipped with ballistic ID tech known as micro-stamping. He also passed the California law that bans detachable magazines on semi-auto rifles, which is just terrible. But he was arrested in 2014 for public corruption, gun trafficking, and for helping an undercover FBI agent buy automatic firearms and shoulder-launched missiles for the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, an Islamic extremist group in the southern Philippines.
Enzo, have you seen what the acronym for the Moro Islamic Liberation Front is?
No.
MILF.
Okay.
Continue.
Investigators found over $100,000 worth of bribes Yi had taken. The FBI snagged Yi as part of a 5-year probe into Chinatown crime boss Raymond Shrimp Boy Chow, who has now been convicted of racketeering charges and is awaiting sentencing. Yi once famously said, quote, "It is extremely important that individuals in the state of California do not own assault weapons. I mean, that is just so crystal clear. There's no debate, no discussion." I guess he doesn't want that because he doesn't want anyone getting into his market.
No, he doesn't.
The dude sells fully automatic weapons and shoulder-launched missiles.
Oh, God. These stories, they just get funnier and funnier every time you read them.
It's funny, but it's, like, absolutely terrible.
It is.
We've reported on the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. Like, they kill people like crazy in the Philippines.
And here's, the guy who at one time was the second highest ranked Democrat in the California State Assembly is directly buying weapons for, granted, it wasn't for him, it was helping an undercover FBI agent do it, but the fact that he was helping him do it, it's like, oh my God. And at the same time, this guy turns around, he's the reason why California can't have rifles that have detachable magazines, okay? Have you ever seen the videos of people that have designed weapons that kind of try to get away or kind of get around these laws? They literally have to take a clip and push it in.
They're
it's
weird.
just, and that's what they want for the rest of the country. We talked about that Democrat bill that was introduced earlier. They said that it would ban weapons with detachable magazines. It would be like that all over the country. Okay? You can't have weapons essentially if they can't have detachable magazines. It's just not going to work.
There'd be so many guns that would be ineligible for ownership then.
Almost every single one, at least 95%.
It would be most weapons. It's crazy. Let's move on now, though, to we got 2 more stories on guns. We could have just made a segment on guns.
I know.
But the way things are these days.
Anyways, well, the second to the last gun story here is a Georgia teacher has been arrested after firing a gun in a classroom. So, a Georgia social studies teacher identified as Jesse Randall Davidson, age 53, has been taken into custody after allegedly firing one shot inside Dalton High School, which is about 90 miles north of Atlanta. Davidson was charged with aggravated assault, carrying a weapon on school grounds, terroristic threats, reckless conduct, possession of a gun during commission of a crime, and disrupting public school, police said in a tweet. Davidson barricaded himself in a classroom and would not allow students to enter the room. The school was placed on lockdown, and police confirmed that no children were in any danger and no students were in the classroom. The school and area were both evacuated. He ultimately surrendered peacefully to police. So the reason why we want to bring this story up is because I saw so many leftists and liberals on Twitter that were using this story as evidence that teachers shouldn't be allowed to carry guns. Well, here's why they're wrong in this one specific case. The guy never hurt anyone. He never wanted to hurt anyone. He was directly telling students not to come in. He barricaded himself before students got to the classroom. He was making sure that no students got hurt. And when they tried to open the door, he shut it and said, "Don't come in." And that was to school administrators before they called the police. So if anything, what this guy did was, because he was a teacher, he exercised additional restraint. He easily could have taken his gun and pointed at someone and pulled the trigger. But he didn't, because he knew better. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. Let's go to the last story on guns this week, and this is probably the best news on guns that we have this week as well.
Yeah, so we'll just go ahead and say it. After becoming one of the most vilified organizations in America, the National Rifle Association has reported that in the 3 weeks since the Parkland High School shooting, they've gained nearly 500,000 new members. This is the biggest increase since the Sandy Hook shooting, when they gained 100,000 members within 2 weeks. So, yeah, all that talk to cut ties with the NRA and, get them to be the most vilified organization in America, yet they just gained 500,000 new members, okay? And once I get my paycheck here in a couple weeks, I am going to also be re-upping my membership as well.
I've had membership to the NRA in the past.
Same here.
But, I guess once I have a firearm, maybe I'll join again. But I personally know people in this period since the Parkland shooting that have, contributed to this 500,000 number. And, if the media wants to try to run the gaslighting, stuff on gun control again after, inevitably when the next mass shooting happens, I mean, they're only going to end up helping the NRA in the end of it, the way it seems at the moment.
But, I mean, other than that, that's really all we have to do in terms of the gun debate. And so we've got one story here in between our next segment when we're going to actually talk more about the Parkland shooting. So here's our buffer story.
Okay. Completely different.
Yeah, this is completely off topic from everything else that we've been talking about so far.
Millennials on course to be the fattest generation in history. Millennials are on course to become the fattest generation on record. A staggering 3/4 of Generation Y will be obese or overweight by the age of 40. Generation Y is described as the generation born between the early 80s and mid-90s. Research done in the UK by the Health Survey for England shows 40% of people aged 16 to 24 are now overweight or obese. That's along with 52% of people aged 25 to 34. They also reported that over 6 million Britons in the age group are struggling with weight gain.
This is not good news. This is not good news at all.
And we can extrapolate these numbers from the United Kingdom over the United States.
It's probably worse in the United States.
We have an even worse problem with this stuff. So, we're getting fat.
Yep, not good news at all.
I mean, not personally myself, but as a generation.
I used to be actually underweight. I'm actually, finally in line with where I'm supposed to be. I think I'm actually, still a little bit underweight. But, that's just me. So,
But yeah, this stuff comes with just how sedentary we've become as a people, we spend so much time sitting down. We have such unhealthy food habits, with the availability of stuff like, Favor, we can just order food out to our house. We don't even need to get up. Any food from anywhere at this point. It's excessive.
It is. And it's only going to get worse, too, because unless... And this is one of those things where I don't really see any laws that you're going to be able to pass to do anything about this. This is really a societal thing. You have the option. Do I eat healthy, or do I want to go get another Big Mac from McDonald's?
But also the problem is, the healthy food costs more.
Yeah.
Usually. It's rough. I don't know. And, people just don't get as much exercise as they need whatsoever.
And again, that's one of those things where that's a cultural thing. That's a societal thing. And unless you change that, you're not going to be able to change anything else. So, anyways.
We're
going to move now into talking about the Parkland shooting itself.
Yeah.
And the updates that we have for this week.
Yeah. So, the first thing that we need to go into is Nicholas Cruz reported himself into law enforcement. In a news report, it's revealed in November, 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz called the police after he physically assaulted a friend. He said, quote, "The thing is, I lost my mother a couple weeks ago, so I am dealing with a bunch of things right now. People who listened to the phone call said he sounded childlike and out of breath. Yet another red flag that was missed by authorities."
Yeah, so even when the point where he's calling the police on himself after he, it says physically assaulted, probably punched a guy, and he admitted, I lost my mother a couple weeks ago, I'm not 100%, I'm dealing with a lot of stuff, and I have a feeling that probably played a lot into the shooting as well, especially the next story that we have. In terms of the inheritance. Apparently, back in December, Nicholas Cruz hired an attorney to try and obtain a share of his late adoptive mother, Linda Cruz's estate. The inheritance he tried to seek was $800,000. They said that if Cruz does actually gain his inheritance, he will lose his public defenders. Florida state law says anyone with more than $2,500 worth of assets is not eligible for free legal representation from the county. So, I don't want to start speculating as to stuff, but I bet you that he's still dealing with the loss of his mother, and there's probably he probably got news like he wasn't going to be able to get his inheritance. I bet you when it comes out, that's part of it. And he figured, well, if I can't get this $800,000 that's supposed to be mine, and I don't have any family left, why not go and shoot up a school full of people I know?
Well, he did say that demons told him to do it.
Yeah, he was a screwed up guy. I'm not saying that this was the entire reason. I'm saying that probably played a part into it.
Yeah. Let's go on to the next thing, though. There's an investigation into misconduct under Sheriff Israel. The Broward County State Attorney's Office launched over 66 misconduct investigations by the Sheriff's Department going back to 2012. Claims range from drug trafficking to kidnapping, all under the watch of Sheriff Scott Israel. So, this is the guy that says he provides great leadership, but he runs a shady ship out there.
Mm-hmm. God, the more that comes out about this Broward County Sheriff's Office, it's like, what are these people doing, dude?
And they are one of the richest sheriff's departments in the country.
I mean, they got that Lamborghini. A lot of good it did them.
Might as well go into the next Parkland story.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Parkland kids have big money backers. Several Parkland students are now traveling America in a march called March for Our Lives to push for gun control in the wake of the mass shooting at their school. The students are being funded by Michael Bloomberg's Everytown for Gun Safety, George Soros's MoveOn.org, and Planned Parenthood. The Women's March organizers are also helping them apply for permits. They're also getting help from the American Federation of Teachers Labor Union. The GoFundMe for the march has already surpassed $3 million. Representative Debbie Washman Schultz, who it was her district where this happened, said she's also advising the kids on communication strategies since, quote, this is the first time I've been in contact with legislators. So, they're trying to make it look like it's this grassroots movement of these
anything but.
It's not. It's super, super astroturf.
Yeah.
And the media has done their part in doing so, but also these big organizations like stuff that Bloomberg and Soros are running.
And even then, the media was trying to push getting all these kids in front of the TV, getting that, David Hogg kid, getting that shaved Latina bitch, whatever her name was, that
Emma
lesbian
Gonzalez.
chick. Yeah, whatever her name was. You notice they stopped having her on the TV. Now it's only David Hogg, probably because, no one actually liked her. No one likes David Hogg either. He hasn't been on TV in a while, but, there was all this talk about, it's crisis actors, or, these people being coached. Well, yeah, they were being coached. We know that they're being coached. We know that they have people that are telling them what to do, what to say, when to say it, and they've got the money that's backing them. This isn't a grassroots organization. This isn't a grassroots movement. These are people that are essentially, they've got the people behind the scenes pulling the strings. They're just the face of it, and no one likes them. People hate them. Every time you see David Hogg, people are like, I don't like this kid. Every time that Emma Gonzalez chick gets on there, it's like, why is this girl telling me about why is this girl the one who's trying to ban my guns? Like, I don't have anything in common with her. I don't have anything in common with any of these kids. Like, I don't like them. I want them off my TV. And, it looks like with all the revelations that have come out regarding the Sheriff's Department and how they handled the matter and how they've handled things in the past, the entire narrative stopped being about Nicholas Cruz. It started being about the Sheriff's Department because, let's face it, they're the ones who dropped the ball on this.
Okay, so I guess the last thing that I wanted to get into, which I guess you can't really say is new news, but it's not stuff that we've talked about, is this Promise program is going on at Parkland High School. It was this program that was started back around about 2011, 2012, I believe, where they wanted to reduce the amount of minority students getting punished for, misconduct. Yeah. They wanted to fight what they were saying was the school to prison pipeline. So what they did is they stopped, even telling the police when they'd have an instance where a kid is doing something, felonious, like assault or bringing drugs to school. And this is something that, Barack Obama praised what they were doing there. He said it was the model, the Parkland High School. And this is something that, Eric Holder and Barack Obama, they actually sent it through the Department of Education, where they set similar standards to where, if you're a school that has disproportionately punishing minority students, or calling the police on them, even if it's justified, you're gonna get many investigations into you.
Yeah.
The Promise program, they needed to see a reduction every single year in the amount of students being arrested to receive grant money, so to the tune of several millions. So before they enacted, the Promise program, they had around 1,000 student arrests, instances where they called the police on students. The first year after they implemented, they went down to 300. But it's not getting rid of the instances of this, it's just not reporting them. So, by virtue of Nicholas Cruz having his last name, he was a visible minority. And that's why when, all these instances of violence with him or threats were being made, they didn't act on it. Because this is just how standard procedure works for the school under the Promise program. It's, supposed to give these minority students a slide because they don't want them looking bad, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's how other people have operated in other school districts across the country, so I would not put that past them to do something exactly like that. And it's unfortunate, because had they actually done their jobs, 17 people would be alive today.
Yeah, they would be alive. He would have not been able to get a firearm. He would just have a criminal record.
Yeah, and that's also part of the problem, going back to what we're talking about with the whole background check system and whatnot. When it comes down to it, if you remember the church shooting that happened here in Texas several months ago, that's a guy who should not have been able to buy firearms because he slipped through their system. And Nicholas Cruz should not have been able to buy firearms had they gone through the legal channels and done what they were supposed to do. So all this talk about, we need stricter background checks. It's not going to make a difference if you're not, making sure that the ones you have right now that are working are actually able to work. And when you have policies like what this school was doing, it just doesn't help it even more. And it's only going to lead to more shootings like this because you're not going after the people that you should be going after.
Yeah, most definitely. But with that said, let's go now to the last story we have before current year college craziness.
So the last story we have is, if you remember last week, Donald Trump Jr. got sent that fake letter that had that white powder inside it, and that they had to take his wife to the hospital and all that. Well, a 24-year-old man from Beverly, Massachusetts, which is northwest of Boston, has been charged with sending that hoax letter containing the white powder to Donald Trump Jr.'s home, which prompted sending his wife to the hospital as a precaution. FBI agents from the Joint Terrorism Task Force arrested Daniel Friselio at his home, and he's being charged with mailing threats and false information and hoaxes. It's also being reported that Friselio was possibly on medications for suicidal thoughts. So, yet another person who's on these type of medications who does something that normal people just would not do.
Yeah. So, with that said, let's get into some current year college craziness.
The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic. You're fucking a white male!
The assumption that women are naturally better caregivers is part of patriarchy.
Die, cis, scum.
You
will not divide us. He will not divide us. He will not divide us. He will not divide us.
It's time for some current year college craziness.
Current year college craziness, the segment of the show where we talk about the crazy stuff that happens on college campuses here and abroad, but predominantly here because, we just got the craziest campuses around, We are the king at having crazy colleges here in the United States. And for the first crazy story, we are going to San Diego State University. So, San Diego State University is offering a class on removing Donald Trump. San Diego State University is offering a course next month dedicated exclusively to the topic of removing Trump from office. The only required reading for the course is a book called, quote, The Case for Impeachment by Alan Lichtman. Through the course though the course description indicates that the class will also explore the possibilities of removal under the 25th Amendment. The course is called, quote, Trump Impeachment, Removal, or Conviction. It is being taught by Professor John Joseph Cleary. The curriculum includes, quote, grounds for impeachment, removal, or indictment, such as, quote, conflicts of interest, foreign
emoluments,
climate change, racism, religious bias, improper influence, nepotism, and a host of crimes, including conspiracy, false statements, and obstruction of justice. The students will be required to attend 2 marathon 15-hour classes spaced roughly 1 week apart.
15-hour class, yeah, that's exactly what you think it is. You go in at 7 a.m., you don't get out till 10 p.m. 15-hour class. And you got to do that twice. Can you imagine sitting through 15 straight hours of some shitlib professor screaming anti-Trump nonsense at you?
But, it's not only just, these are the grounds that Trump can be removed from office because he,
he fired Comey.
He fired Comey. He, foreign collusion. But also just, I'm just imagining this class. They say climate change, racism, religious bias. Those aren't crimes. These are just saying, well, you should remove him because he's doing this.
We need to remove him because he said things I don't like. He said things that offend me.
He doesn't care about the things I do. It's just God, there's going to be people that actually pay for this class. What a big waste of time.
I would love to go there and sit in on the class. I would love to pay to go to that class, to be the only Trump person there, and just fire back at everything. I'd like to see how long it takes before one of those people pulls out a gun and shoots me in the head. Talk about, preventing gun violence.
Well, they just say that you're a KKK white supremacist neo-Nazi.
I know.
You've supported the guy that, half the population voted to become president.
Exactly. So,
let's move on now to the Great White North. But, a college that doesn't care about white, apparently. University hosts It's Okay to Be Against Whiteness event. Trent University in Ontario, Canada is hosting an event called It's Okay to Be Against Whiteness in response to It's Okay to Be White posters put up on campus. The event is being hosted by the Trent Central Students Association by Michael Capello, who in the event description is heralded as a white settler living and working in Regina, Saskatchewan. Regina. The event looks to challenge the ideas of whiteness as an academic term that enables the practices, beliefs, habits, and attitudes that enable the unequal distribution of power and privilege based on skin color. It's okay. Skin color.
It's okay to be white, Enzo.
Apparently not.
Apparently not in the Great White North. So
I just want to say this again. enables the practices, beliefs, habits, and attitudes that enable the unequal distribution of power and privilege based on skin color.
It's all because of whiteness, Enzo.
I hate this whiteness term because, and we dealt with this, with the Rudy Martinez article.
Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you.
Like, there are people that are white, but they try to say that they don't exist as white people, that is the ideology of whiteness. Like, this is the level of thinking.
They tried to deny that whiteness exists, and yet then turn around and attack white people for being white.
And having white privilege.
It's part of their anti-white agenda, is what it is.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Why would we also, just with the wording, the unequal distribution of power and privilege, why are we to assume that there would be an equal distribution of these things?
There's never in history been an equal distribution of power and privilege, whether that's based on skin color, whether that's based on status in society. There has never, and there will never be, an equal distribution of power and privilege.
Yeah, think
Granted,
about
I don't even think that would...
The millions of people throughout history who have died in the name of fighting unequal distributions of power and privilege. It's like, this isn't going to change, dude.
No.
Okay.
All you're going to do is make life terrible for us. But, you know, before we go to the next story, I do want to actually thank you for bringing up Rudy's article because, you know, before we go to the next story, there was a top 10 list that was created for the top 10 worst campuses in the United States for free speech. Well, Texas State made it on that list. So,
It's interesting to be someone that's that knows the environment.
As a group of people on the campus who actively help trigger these people into doing things, I would say that, you know, it's probably our fault. I hate to say it. But, you know, let's get out of Texas State for a while. Let's go up to the great state of Michigan because Michigan State.
Oh my God!
I was debating whether or not even to say this story, so I'm just going to say
I didn't see this until we were prepping right before.
Yeah, it was fun when I was typing the slideshow out earlier. But Michigan State University apparently is publishing a new survey. Granted, this is a survey for students. It is not required for students to take the survey. However, it is suggested that they take it because they want to try to get as many people to answer the survey questions as possible. Well, that survey is asking the students some unusual questions about their sexual history. One of the questions asks students if they have ever gagged on a penis or ejaculated on someone's face. Some students thought the survey was a joke at first, but the school administrators remain adamant that the survey was designed to help campus services improve and help researchers understand extreme sexual behaviors in college-age students.
Gagging on a penis.
Gagging on a penis or ejaculating on someone's face.
Extreme sexual behaviors. This is so weird.
I wish I could find a copy of the survey to see what the other questions were. Unfortunately, I couldn't. I tried to. Oh well.
Ejaculate on someone's face.
Let's just move on to the next story.
This is a university. Okay,
so
move on to the last story.
Coming back down to Texas, UTSA, University of Texas at San Antonio, some students there are planning to start publishing a No Whites Allowed magazine. The group said that white people are welcome to attend the launch party, but while their support is quote-unquote appreciated, the founders insist that it is a zine. They keep using the word zine, Z-I-N-E. It's short for magazine because they're idiots. They say it's a zine for QPOC and by QPOC. QPOC standing for queer persons of color there. The magazine description explains, quote, "For a long time, black and brown people, especially those who are queer, have been told that they don't have a space, that they don't have a voice or a say. With this, we would like to create a space." The magazine is set to be revealed on March 1st at La Botanica, which describes itself as Texas's first vegan restaurant with a full bar and performance event venue. So, yeah, Enzo, it looks like we've got a new newspaper we need to drive down and get a copy of.
My brother goes to the university.
Can you have him pick up a copy of the No Whites Allowed magazine?
Yeah, we'll put it on top of the
I want
White is an abomination. Newspaper protects the state.
I'm getting that frame, by the way. Don't you think I'm not? Like, there's not.
I forgot my copy.
I have 4 copies here at my apartment, so whenever you're next back, you can pick yours up.
Oh yeah.
But anyways, so yeah,
Whites Allowed.
No Whites Allowed magazine. NWA.
That's not trying to be divisive at all.
No, it's for equality, Enzo.
POC expressing their anger, and apparently they're allowed to be angry, and whites, that's not allowed.
No, I mean, imagine if you had a thing called No Non-Whites Allowed.
No non-whites allowed.
No Non-Whites Allowed magazine. Instead of NWA, it's NNWA.
That magazine would get thrown out quickly, and you would be barred from society.
You would get kicked out of campus, you'd get barred from society, you'd never be able to get a job, you'd never be able to have a career, you wouldn't be able to get married because you don't have a career, you'd die childless and alone. Probably a good idea not to make it.
That's white privilege and power.
Yeah. But that's all we have for current year college craziness this week.
Let's go on to international news, though. We got a lot of good stuff this week.
In another place where no whites are allowed.
Yes, very, very good segue into this one. South Africa, the South African Parliament passed motions to take white-owned land. The National Assembly on Tuesday voted to amend the South African Constitution to allow for the expropriation of land without compensation. The vote passed 241 to 83. Opening the debate, the economic freedom fighter leader Julius Malema said, "The time for reconciliation is over. Now is the time for justice." Gugile Nkwinti, the Minister of Rural Affairs and Land Reform, said Monday evening, quote, "The ANC unequivocally supports the principle of land expropriation without compensation."
This is terrible, dude.
Oh yeah, very much so. It's a scary to know. I have many friends over there that will see their land confiscated from them.
In the last month and a half, I've heard that there's been almost 200 more white farm murders that have gone on.
Yeah,
and once they start actually taking these people's land, that's just going to skyrocket even more. People are going to try to fight back.
And looking at the historical examples of where they've done this, in Zimbabwe, you're gonna see mobs just show up on people's farms and brutally, violently force the white landowners off.
I wouldn't be surprised if some of them, they just kill them. I wouldn't be surprised. They already do that. It's gonna happen.
I mean, for fuck's sake, you got a political party called the Economic Freedom Fighters that, they openly just call for violence against whites, and it's not going to end good for anyone involved. But I mean, fuck, it's rough stuff. But
yeah, I don't know, dude. I wish I could do more to help our friends and stuff down there, but I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in South Africa, and she's tried to avoid this sort of topic when I talk to her for a while, just because she doesn't want to say anything that could get her in trouble. But she's started taking a Krav Maga class, okay, and she never used to be that type of person. She's actively trying to learn how to fight and defend herself because she knows exactly what is coming, and I fear for her safety too.
We're gonna, when I get done with this campaign, I'll email Simon Roach about him coming on again. We can talk about further with someone involved down there on what's going on. But yeah, very, very frightening stuff.
Yeah. So we'll keep everyone updated, and hopefully, I think you had mentioned this last week. I'd like to try to do one more interview with Simon Roach just to get his take on what's going on, but he's going to be so busy, and I don't know if we'd be even able to schedule anything soon for that if we did do that.
Yeah.
But we'll see about that. So I guess we should probably move to Europe now.
Yeah. So the first story in regards to Europe is Ireland is looking to take 1 million migrants. The Irish government is being slammed for paying journalists to write good news about Project Ireland 2040. The document outlines plans to boost Ireland's current population of 4.7 million people by 1 million more people using mass migration. The project is being slammed on social media as a globalist program to replace the native population. The Irish of Lynn's...
I should say town of. The Irish town of.
The Irish town of Lisdoonvarra? Did I say that right?
Yeah.
With a population of just 300 people, voted on Wednesday on whether to allow the government to reallocate 115 migrants to their town. The final results were 93% saying no. The government insists the migrants must not be delayed. So here we got an instance of, the government wants one thing, and the people of Ireland want it. And,
they definitely
they're
don't.
Going to force it upon them, and it's going to be a very dramatic change of their society that is going to cause a lot of problems. It's going to be similar to what we've seen with a lot of places that have taken on massive migration in Europe, such as Sweden and Belgium and Germany.
And
it's going to be bad.
And the Irish have this kind of name for themselves for not exactly being the most peaceful people out there, and a lot of Europe has kind of peacefully been sitting by letting these things happen. I don't know, dude. I hate to say it. I think the Irish might be the ones who really do fight back, and I mean fight back against this. Imagine if the IRA starts getting involved. Holy shit, dude.
It'll get crazy.
I mean, at some point, governments are going to have to realize they can't keep it up. But they're going to do everything they can in the meantime. I mean, look, this is a city, this Lisdoonvarra, this town, 300 people. They want to bring 115 migrants there. Okay, they want to essentially increase the size of the city by over 30%, over a third. None of the people there want it. Okay, 93% voted no. They don't want these people here, and yet the government is insisting that they make the migrants come to their town. At some point, do the people that live in cities not have a right to say we don't want people to come here? And if they move them there, do they not have a right to say we want you to leave? At some point, one of these places, one of these towns, something is going to straight up disobey and say, no, you're not allowed to do this. No, we don't want you people to come here. If you give these people here, we're going to kick them out. Okay, you're going to start seeing people literally fighting back in the streets against their governments. I mean, they already are in some cases, but it's only going to get worse. In this town here, 93% saying no. I guarantee you go to any Irish village and it's probably going to show the same results.
And you just think about in terms of these numbers we're talking about, okay, Ireland is a population of 4.7 million. You add 1 million migrants. Are there going to be jobs for 1 million migrants?
Of course not.
Are there enough services for these migrants in terms of healthcare? Is there enough services in terms of schools? No. There's no carrying capacity for Ireland to just take in 1 million people out of nowhere. But they're still going to force it because this is what they want. So bad stuff.
Yeah.
But let's move on.
And now we have a little story that's going to be what the future of the United States looks like if the left ever regains power here in the country. And that is Marine Le Pen has been criminally charged for anti-ISIS tweets. French politician and 2017 presidential candidate Marine Le Pen has been criminally charged for anti-ISIS tweets that she sent back in 2015. The tweets depicted graphic physical cruelty carried out by ISIS, also known as Daesh, against their victims, including the beheading of U.S. journalist James Foley. Le Pen is facing charges of communicating, quote, violent messages that incite terrorism or pornography or seriously harm human dignity that can be viewed by a minor. Le Pen said, quote, this only shows French citizens what the EU is, and that it's all part of the system that wants to stop the French people's candidate that I am. If convicted, Le Pen faces up to 3 years in prison and a fine of nearly $100,000. And I say that seriously, if the radical left regains power in this country, which they will at some point in the future, we know that's going to happen, you can kiss your First Amendment free speech rights goodbye. Le Pen, all she did was she tweeted out stuff about ISIS, saying she didn't like them, showing, look how cruel these people are, look what they're doing to their victims, and yet now she's facing up to 3 years in prison and a fine of nearly $100,000, all for saying, here's your enemy, look how violent they are.
Yeah. Very, very insane stuff.
And this will happen in the United States if the left regains power. It's already happening in France, in Europe, in Belgium. In Europe. It's happening in France. It's happening in Germany. It's happening in the United Kingdom. Things like this are happening all the time. Luckily, it's not really happening here, but it will. It will. So,
let's move on to the next story. Merkel admits no-go zones in Germany. In a shocking admittance, German Chancellor Angela Merkel confessed that there are areas of Germany, quote, where people are afraid to go. She said in a TV interview Monday, quote, the state has to ensure that whenever people move or meet in public areas, they feel safe. It means, for example, that there cannot be any no-go areas, that there cannot be areas where people are afraid to go, but such places are a reality, so we have to call them what they are and do something about them. Earlier this year, police union chief Rainer Wendt claimed authorities are unable to enforce the law thanks to the rise of dangerous no-go zones caused as a result of mass immigration.
So there you go. Merkel herself is admitting that there's no-go zones in Germany, and this is after she's previously said that there aren't any there.
And it's not something she wants to admit to.
No,
she
it's not.
Want to admit there's been problems for these millions of migrants that they've taken into, but the no-go zones all across Europe have popped up all over the place, and they're building parallel societies within the societies that are opposed to the host society. And it's not going to end well.
Yeah, you know what they say, whenever a virus latches onto the host, it never really turns out very well for the host, does it?
No.
Yeah. So, I guess we can go on to two stories that we have coming out of the UK here.
Yeah. So, the first one. London teacher trained army of children for ISIS. An ISIS-obsessed teacher from London used an Islamic school to train an army of jihadi children who he hoped to unleash carnage on the streets of London. 25-year-old Uman Hake showed beheading videos to children as young as 11 and made them reenact the Westminster terror attack in which a policeman was stabbed to death. He wanted them to carry out attacks at 30 targets around London, including Big Ben, the Westfield shopping area, and Heathrow Airport. He also had access to 250 children over 4 years working in 2 Muslim secondary schools.
Yeah, imagine if this guy was successful, okay? 250 children over 4 years. How many of them do you think were already somewhat radicalized by parents that they had? Now you add on top of it a teacher who is, directly indoctrinating these kids to become jihadi warriors for, the Prophet Muhammad or whatever the hell.
There's a way that they could have just avoided this to begin with and just not let these people go to the United Kingdom.
No, but that would be racist, Enzo!
But you wouldn't have people trying to start children armies in the capital to blow up stuff.
Well, unfortunately, those on the left would prefer, their fellow citizens getting blown apart by nail bombs than to be, labeled as racist. Because, my God, we can't let that happen, can we?
Yeah.
Can't actually do anything about these problems now, can we? It's insane. There are two different types of people in this world, okay? There are people who think rationally, and there are people who are dumbasses. Okay, and unfortunately, we've been tricked into thinking that there's this thing called equality, and equality under the law. Unfortunately, that is not the case, okay? Half the people out there are too dumb for their own good, and they should not be able to vote. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Let's go to the last story, though, for Europe, and that is in regards to actually what you're mentioning, equality.
Yep.
British judges told to favor minorities to achieve equality. Official new guidance on equal treatment instructs judges to favor non-white defendants in order to redress inequality. Quote, true equal treatment may not always mean treating everyone in the same way, says the Equal Treatment Guide, produced by the Judicial College, an organization for training judges in Britain. The word transgender appears also 232 times in the document. So, yeah, we got some like double speak going on. The way to have equal treatment is to not treat people equally, because that helps you achieve equality by treating people unequally.
And this kind of goes back to things that we've said in the show before. There is a difference between equal opportunity and equal outcome. If you want to try to say, I want equality, most people are thinking you want an equal opportunity, but that's not what they want. What they want is an equal outcome. And we know that humans are not equal. They don't act equally. They don't think equally. And they're going to do things that are not equal. And that's going to lead to disproportionates in things such as, how successful people are, crime statistics, whatever. And unfortunately speaking, when people say they want equality, what they really want is equal outcomes. And since we know people aren't equal, you can't have that. And you're going to lead to things like this. Again, you cannot let the regain power, otherwise there will be things like this that will happen in the United States as well. We're already seeing it in some areas. But I digress.
Yeah. Going now on to Asia, we got a story in the Philippines. Duterte looking to resign in advance, won't run in 2022. Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte announced he won't run for another presidential term in 2022. He will instead elect to resign in advance if he doesn't truly decide not to run for re-election. Duterte was first elected in 2016 and served as mayor of Davao for 22 years prior. So I've actually seen more things to come out about this. It looks to be that he doesn't even want to be president beyond 2020.
Really?
He's he's up there in age, and he's done stuff already.
Yeah, how old is he? Do you know off the top of your head?
He's over 70.
Yeah, so, I mean, as much as I like the guy, I don't blame him. I mean, it's an extremely stressful job. He is getting up there in age, and I mean,
he's got a full-on war with communists.
Yeah, and
Muslims.
As much as I would like to see him stay in office, as much as I like the guy, like I said, I don't blame him. Okay, it's extremely stressful. I'm not sure even I would be able to do a job like that. So I don't know.
Yeah. Let's move on now to North America. Canada is looking to take deported Africans from Israel. Several Christian churches in Canada working directly with the Canadian government have struck a deal with the Israeli government to take thousands of Africans that are being deported from Israel, making sure they aren't sent back to Africa. The deal lets African migrants living in Israel to be spared from deportation while their applications to Canada are being processed.
Yeah, and we're not talking about a small number. Like, the numbers I see were in the thousands, okay? These aren't just 14, 15 people. Like, these are thousands of Africans living in Israel that Israel wants to deport, but instead these cut Canadians are like, oh sure, bring them here. It won't be a problem. We'll sponsor them. We know how that's going to turn out.
Even though, as it is with all the refugees Canada's taken, they're bleeding themselves dry. They're paying billions upon billions of dollars for those people. But, I mean, you got to think with your heart, not your head. So take all the refugees.
And there's another thing here. I mean, let's go back to that last paragraph there. The deal lets African migrants living in Israel to be spared from deportation while their applications to Canada are being processed. That means those Africans that Israel wants to deport get to still continue to live in Israel as long as their applications to Canada are being processed. Theoretically speaking, Canada could take 6 years to process those applications. Meanwhile, the people don't get deported from Israel. So I'm just saying, they might be able to take advantage of that if they so choose. That's all I got to say for that.
Let's go on now to the last story for this week, and that is out of Australia. There's a new migrant crime wave in Melbourne. African criminals living in Melbourne, Australia have committed at least 10 major incidents. This is over the last 2 days, according to police reports. One victim was a 96-year-old woman who was asleep in her bed when she heard someone breaking into her home around 4:30 a.m. The intruder went into into all of her bedrooms and stole her jewelry. Another man was asleep when his house was broken into. The vandals assaulted him, causing him to suffer from minor injuries before they ran away. Crime statistics show the number of offenses in Victoria have risen by 12.2% over the last year. A new report reveals that 4 of the people are linked to the African Apex gang and were all deported back in January.
So these are people that have previously been deported from Australia a month ago, are now back in Australia, part of a gang, and are going around and robbing people. Not robbing just any people, they're robbing like 5 people a night, okay? The article we got this from had a map of where all these different break-ins and stuff have happened. It's all over the city, okay? 10 major offenses in 2 days, and these are all happening at nighttime. You know, when people are asleep. Okay, these are people that should not be in their country, yet somehow they're back in there. How is that? I don't know.
I remember it must have been at least a month ago. I brought up a story on the show about Sudanese crime in Australia, particularly in Melbourne again, because that's where they have most of them. And the Sudanese don't even make up 1% of the population there, but they make up something like 30% of the home invasions in Melbourne.
Amazing.
Like, these people are extremely dangerous. And, you know, as we just said, many of them were deported, but they're still causing the crimes.
You know what we need? We need more of them. That's the answer. We should bring 1 million more of them to Australia. That'll really solve the problem, won't it?
Just let Canada take them.
Yeah. And then we build the wall on the Canadian border.
Yeah, we'll have to build a wall with Canada, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
I'm willing to do it.
So with that said, it is very late here, and I got to get up very early for a meeting tomorrow. But glad I could finally still do the show. We're gonna do the show back in the studio next week.
Finally
Sunday.
be back.
We're gonna get back to the regular show.
But with that being said, I just want to reiterate what I said earlier in the program at the beginning. We are now on Patreon, so if you want to donate to the show and you feel like donating us and helping us with our fees that we have, it costs us, quite a bit of money every month to be able to actually do this show. And if you'd like to help us out with that, you can find us on Patreon and donate to us there. And again, if you donate $5 a month, and with your permission, we'll thank you personally on the air. And if you donate at least $10 a month, then you can give us any midweek topic to do within reason, and we will definitely do a midweek episode on that, whatever topic you choose. So with that being said, that's really all I have to say for this week. It's been an interesting week.
Yeah, it has been. I wouldn't say that there has been gigantic things happen, but it has definitely been a more active week than the last couple of weeks.
Oh, there is one more thing that I want to say. This is also something we talked about at the beginning of the show. The Texas primary is March 6th. That is this upcoming Tuesday. If you're listening to this episode and you're listening to this before March 6th and you're in Texas, go vote in the primary, okay? Don't sit this thing out. Go do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
If you haven't already. I mean, I early voted. Did you? Oh, wait, yeah. I early voted the other day, so.
I haven't voted.
But we'll get you voted here on election day. But, other than that, I think that's pretty much it for the show.
Yeah. So, thank you for listening to another episode of Trumpet Radio, and have a good one.
Goodbye, everybody.